Founders Park Media and Samurai 7 Books presents Moonbase Rogue, Book 3 of the Viper series, written by Mark Caldwell Jones, read by Play AI. Part 10, Us and Them. Chapter 36, Ryder Astronautics Outpost. The first sensation that pierced the fog in Natalie Nicks's mind was the cold, biting stone against her back. She fluttered her eyes open, only to be met with the harsh reality of a makeshift prison cell, its starkness amplified by the pallid lighting of some kind of subterranean shelter. She was lying on a thin, unforgiving mattress, the kind that barely served its purpose, set on a cot pushed into one corner. Her back was literally against a frigid cave wall. As she tried to orient herself, fragmented memories of her last conscious moments within the Persephone played like a distorted film. There had been a struggle to enter the spaceship, a nap, and a fantastical dream about barbecuing on the lunar surface. Then the men rescued her, or so she had assumed. It now seemed their intentions were more insidious. Based on her current condition, it seemed her good fortune had taken a dark turn. She pushed herself up, her mind racing as her gaze swept across the cell. It was small, enclosed by one wall made of metal bars and a heavy door that featured an electronic locking mechanism. The prison was crudely constructed. The metal bars weren't thick. She figured it wouldn't take much bionic strength to bend them. Her cybernetic arm twitched with readiness. Without a second thought, she lunged at the door, her fist cocked back, ready to deliver a blow that might set her free. But as her hand made contact, a violent jolt of electricity arced through her body. It sent her reeling back onto the cot, pain splintering through every nerve. "Damn it," Nicks groaned. "That hurt." The cell door was rigged. Any attempt to use her enhanced strength would trigger another electrical shock. "Flux, are you there?" No response. Breathing heavily, she assessed her new environment with a more cautious eye, noticing for the first time that she wasn't alone. One other person shared the cell with her. A rugged man with a scar tracing down his left cheek stirred from the other cot. He had been watching her, his eyes bright and calculating. "It's electrified," the other prisoner said, his voice rough like gravel. "Not enough to kill you, unless you cling too long, but enough to hurt like hell." "But why?" Nicks wondered aloud. She was still getting her bearings. "He added the electrification just for you. You seem to have really freaked them out." "Who are they?" Nicks asked, rolling over, her arms still twitching. "And for that matter, who are you?" "Name's Dodge," he said, leaning out of the shadowy corner. A wry smirk played on his lips, despite the grimness of their situation. "How'd I end up in here?" "They found you in the Persephone. You were unconscious. Seems there was a nitrogen gas leak in the cabin. I thought that was oxygen." "Easy mistake. But it could have killed you if those guys hadn't found you." She knew enough about nitrogen asphyxia. It could easily lead to hallucinations and finally unconsciousness. Luckily, she'd been rescued in time. "Yeah, I guess I should be grateful for that." "So, who are you guys?" Nicks eyed Dodge. He was a muscular, brutish-looking man with thick, tattooed forearms, dark brown hair, and a full lumberjack beard flecked with silver. Late 40s, she guessed. "Lunar Miner 9, Conrad Crater Outpost, Ryder Astronautics," he said rather proudly. "Those asshats that threw you in here are the rest of my crew." "No shit. No reason to lie." Nicks rubbed her hand. It still felt numb, but her fingers were responding better now. "Miners on the moon. Wow, who knew? Only a very small group, actually. The Pentagon, Martin Ryder himself, it seems. And us, unlucky bastards. A bunch of fools, too, desperate to read the fine print. Bet you missed it too, didn't you? I sure did." Nicks cracked a smile. "What'd you do to piss these guys off?" "Things have been going bad for some time now. We're all ready for a ride home, but every time we've asked Martin Ryder in the Home Office, they put us off. To make matters worse, some creepy Chinese chick came on the last resupply. Kilgore and Garrick were hired to take her over to the Moonbase, but when they finally came back, everything went to total shit. I was fed up and got crossways with those two. Wouldn't go along with Cyrus's bullshit. He's our crew leader, or was, until he went nuts. One night we got into a bit of a disagreement about fuel cells. I argued with him. He called it mutiny, smacked me across the face. We fought. Instead of helping me, Garrick and those dickheads turned on me, jumped me, beat me senseless. Next thing, I woke up in here. Got to say, there's not much hope for either of us getting out alive. That mother trucker is full batshit crazy now, and the crew has bought everything he's selling. Plus, he rigged the airlock. That's ended most of the arguing. Rigged the airlock? Yeah, Cyrus rigged the outer door with some goddamn explosive he picked up at the Moonbase. He wears the detonator around his neck like a goddamn necklace. Threatens to blow it any time he doesn't get his way. He's become a certified dictator. The boys really don't have much choice but to go along. I just wish they'd organize and fight back, but now with the Moonbase issue, ain't much to do but sit and wait on a rescue. What made him snap? He saw something in that base. What exactly? He won't tell us specifics, but whatever it was freaked him out. Nicks thought back to the horrors she'd found on Devon Island. Something like that would be enough to traumatize anyone. That weird Chinese woman is named Fang, and she's taken control of Luna 1. She's doing terrible things to her prisoners and running crazy experiments. Growing clones, if you can believe that, she said. Yeah, I know. Cyrus thinks you're one of them. Nicks shook her head. Of course. The miners had said as much when they found her. She remembered that now. So Cyrus is scared of Fang and her chimeras? Nicks asked. No, not them. Then who is it? Says it's the alien. Fang is working for an alien. The hive-like habitat of the outpost was a hollowed-out sanctuary within a cavern of the moon's belly. The air was heavy with the scent of machine oil, regolith dust, and the acrid tang of human sweat. A testament to the harshness of lunar life. Natalie Nicks felt the weight of dozens of eyes as she and her fellow prisoner Dodge were escorted through the winding corridors that led to the central chamber. This vast space, illuminated only by LED lights, served as the heart of the men's communal life. The dim light cast long shadows and fueled a sense of foreboding. Cyrus Kilgore sat in the center of the room, at the head of a long workbench that served as a makeshift banquet table. He surveyed the space and men within it like a king holding court, sitting stoically as they approached. He was a commanding figure, whose long beard, unkempt hair, and the erratic gleam in his eyes suggested the wildness of a Viking, or the irrationality of a mental patient. He was flanked by several burly miners, their stern faces adding to an already unsettling atmosphere. As Nicks and Dodge were shoved into the center of the room, Kilgore's eyes fixed on Nicks. What have you brought me, boys? Is this tonight's entertainment, or just another one of that crazy woman's damn spies? Nicks squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze with a defiant glare. None of the above. My name is Captain Natalie Nicks, and I'm here on a mission with Delta Black to rectify the situation at Luna 1 and get everyone home safe. Here to save the day, huh? Kilgore chuckled darkly. He got up from his seat and stepped closer. Well, you've gotten off to a bad start. Briggs tells me you almost suffocated in that derelict ship. That's right, boss, Garrick said. She was near dead for sure. If she's our rescue, I can't say I'm too impressed. Well, if she's no good on the rescue front, maybe she'll do for some entertainment. Kilgore laughed, his voice dripping with insinuation. He raised his hands and spun in a circle. I told you, boys, I'd take care of you. A ripple of gruff laughter broke out among the men. Dodge shook his head and looked at his feet. Nicks smirked at the joke and carefully looked around the room, trying her best to catch the eye of each man. There were 7, including Dodge and Kilgore. It seemed more important to win the group at large to her side, especially if Kilgore was a lost cause. "Normally I'd be up for the challenge," Nicks retorted wryly. "But I didn't come all this way to play games. I'm here to resolve a very dangerous situation. I could use your help." She explained that her teammate, Dr. Ken Park, was maintaining the Dadao in orbit, ready to transport as many survivors as possible back to Earth. They just needed to retake the Moonbase, take Fang into custody, free the prisoners, and then secure the Moonbase's lunar landing vehicle. She had unfortunately wrecked the one from the Dadao. That LLV could then ferry the crew and miners back to the Dadao, and from there, on to Earth. "Sure, that sounds perfectly impossible," Garrick snapped sarcastically. "Plus, that witch in the base tempted us with this ploy before. Maybe you're just another one of her female goons, huh? Come to lure us back into her web," Kilgore continued, his voice mocking. "I mean, you look just like one of those scary bitches. Maybe you've been up here too long? Are all women starting to look alike to you?" Kilgore walked around her in a circle, studying her closely. "No, that's not it. You're the spitting image of the newest one she conjured in her god-forsaken high-tech cauldron. I've seen the Chimeras up close, and I'm nothing like them," Nicks countered firmly. "I'm not working for Fang. That's not why I'm here, not in the least. Test me and see for yourself." Kilgore scoffed. "That's what a good spy would say. It's what a good clone would be designed to do. Deceive, infiltrate, destroy. Perfect replicas. Perfect killers. Do Fang's clones look like this?" Nicks shot back, frustration flaring. She pulled up her pant leg, exposing the gash running up her right leg. Mouse had been forced to remove portions of her artificial skin during her repairs. The metallic glint of her cybernetic components was evident even under the dim light. A collective gasp erupted from the men. Kilgore stepped back, amazed at what he saw. "I can't say I've seen something like that," Kilgore growled. He seemed genuinely taken aback. "If she's building women like you over there, we are walking dead men." "Leg came straight from the secret Pentagon labs that built your mining equipment and Moonbase. From the same people that sent me here to make sure missions like yours and mine stay on course, and to make sure people like Fang are neutralized and served some justice. Plus, one of my very best friends is a prisoner in that base, so I intend on fulfilling my mission. Help me get on with it, please, or get out of my way." Kilgore paused, then leaned in, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I don't really care where the hell you came from, lady. The real power behind Fang isn't some goddamn clone or robot. It's something more dangerous." Nicks's eyebrows shot up. "What are you talking about?" His gaze intensified. I saw it with my own eyes, heard it with my own ears. Fang takes orders from something beyond this world. "You heard Fang talking to an alien?" Nicks asked, her tone incredulous. "Yes, goddammit, that is exactly what I heard," Kilgore exclaimed. He ran a hand through his thick hair as if he might tear some of it from his head, some damn creature without a body that communicates to her through her computers. "I can't explain it, but it is as real as you and I. That's why she's been able to do what she does. If we try and fight her head-to-head, we'll all get killed or captured, which would be much worse. You don't even want to know what she's doing to those people she's got locked up." Kilgore fingered the detonator that hung around his neck, causing all the men to stiffen visibly. This man ruled by fear. A well-founded fear. He seemed perched on the edge of insanity, capable of tipping into deadly actions at any moment. "If I go out, I'm going on my own terms. I won't be one of that bitch's goddamn experiments," he said. Nicks didn't have a response for that. She was still trying to understand Kilgore's outlandish claim. "I don't know how to explain what you saw, but I can guarantee you I have no part in what Fang is doing," Nicks argued, trying to forge an uneasy alliance. "I'm here to stop her, to end whatever madness she's involved in. If you and your men stand against her, then we're on the same side." "If you want our help," Kilgore said, eyeing her warily, "you'll have to prove we can trust you." "Okay, you got it." Nicks threw up her hands in desperation. "We can't waste any more time on this. Tell me what I have to do." As he considered how to test Natalie Nicks, Kilgore paced back and forth, his eyes occasionally flicking to her with a mixture of suspicion and calculation. "Here's the situation," Kilgore began, his voice gruff as he outlined his proposal. "Our habitat is running low on power. We need more to live comfortably. There's a depot not too far from here that has what we need. Unused backup fuel cells, just sitting there. But getting one isn't as easy as a quick run to the store." He paused, raking a hand through his beard thoughtfully. "The depot's guarded by a security drone. Every time we've tried to approach in the past, those damn machines have alerted Fang. Then her goons come racing out, and, well, that turns into a fucking disaster." His voice trailed off, and he shook his head grimly. "Last time we sent Branson. Poor bloke was ambushed, killed, and his body taken back to the base for God knows what. No doubt it takes balls going out there." Kilgore gazed sharply at Nicks. "We drew lots after Branson disappeared. Dodge came up short, but refused. The boys called him a coward, and maybe he is. Or maybe he's just plain smart. Needless to say, we're short on volunteers." Leaning closer, Kilgore lowered his voice, ensuring only Nicks could hear. "If you retrieve a fuel cell, I'll take that as a sign we can trust you. Do that, and I'll allow a team of volunteers to go with you to Luna 1. But understand, there's a chance you don't make it back." He let the implication hang in the air. "And if it's a trap? If you're working for Fang, the deal's off the moment we suspect anything. This is your chance to prove where your loyalties lie." Nicks nodded slowly, her mind racing. She knew the mission was risky, but it could save lives and maybe even build a helpful alliance. It was a gamble, but one worth taking. "I'll do it," she responded firmly. "You'll have your fuel cell." Kilgore studied her for a moment, then nodded, seemingly satisfied. "All right, then. You'll leave after dinner. And, Captain," he added, his tone a warning, "remember, I'll be watching every step you take." "Understood," she said. Kilgore fingered the detonator that hung around his neck, his thumb tracing over the metal surface as he locked eyes with her. "Until then, make one wrong move, and I won't hesitate to use this." Nicks said nothing. She didn't need to. Every word of the threat was real. Nicks joined the miners for dinner, sitting among them in the main gathering room that buzzed with an undercurrent of curiosity. As their meal started, some men gave Nicks nods of respect or curious glances. Dodge, seated away from the main group, was notably shunned, a consequence Nicks had learned of his reputed cowardice. The dinner itself was unremarkable. A vegetarian chili composed of shelf-stable rations and vegetables the men had grown in a meager hydroponic garden. But the drink, dubbed Earthshine, took center stage. Rex Tanner, the rough-looking chef of the group, handed Nicks a flask with a nod. "This is the good stuff," he declared. "Genuine moonshine, brewed on the actual moon." Nicks took a tentative sip, the liquid searing her throat like gasoline. When she coughed, all the men laughed. "An acquired taste," Elton Mace said with a wink. He seemed to be the oldest miner of the bunch and the most jovial. He offered her another shot, which she politely waved away. The conversation loosened up as the flask made a second round. During the third pass, Dodge got up and joined in, sitting down beside Nicks. The fourth round took an uncomfortable turn when Garrick leaned over Nicks with a smirk. "Do you want any of the men before the depot run?" he asked. Nicks stared, bewildered. "You're joking, right?" Dodge chimed in sheepishly. "Cyrus made him ask you. It's been ages since we've seen a woman." "Unfortunately," "I'm not your normal woman," she countered, feigning concern while pointing at her exposed cybernetics. "These bare wires could get a boy in serious trouble." There was a round of laughs, and Garrick skulked off with a scowl on his face. The flask made another round, and the subject was never brought up again. When the meal wound down, Mace led Nicks to the ready room to inspect her pressure suit for the test. Dodge, Garrick, and Kilgore followed. The suit, a relic of the past, was draped over a table. She eyed it with suspicion and a hint of disdain. She figured she must be drunk because what she was looking at didn't compute, not in the least. It was a disaster. The suit was a patchwork of desperation. Faded fabric from old suits stitched together haphazardly, seals that looked brittle enough to crack under stress, and a helmet with a crudely repaired crack that ran down the visor like a scar. "This is what I'm supposed to do the depot run in? Will I survive?" Nicks asked, her voice dripping with skepticism as she picked up the helmet to examine the patch job closer. Kilgore caught her eye. He was smiling. That wild, crazy look was back. She rolled her eyes. "This is a joke, right?" "No joke," Kilgore said. "Not one anyone here would find funny." But he and Garrick were smiling. "Though, I'm completely screwed. It ain't the best." "No one said you get the best." Garrick barked gruffly, avoiding her gaze. "I'd prefer the data suit you found me in." "Hell no," Mace grumbled. "The comms package built into that suit would give our position away too easily. The men disabled it when they picked you up. We might use it for parts in the future, but we're not powering that back up anytime soon." Dodge nudged her, trying to inject some confidence. "This one's not pretty, but it'll keep the vacuum out." Nicks examined the suit further, noting its numerous makeshift repairs. She pointed to a particularly battered area. "What happened here?" "These are points of failure," Mace explained solemnly. "They've all been well repaired. But just in case you get any leaks along the way, we're sending you out with a tool to make new seals." Mace showed her how to use the repair wand that would be attached to her utility belt, a tool with a fast-acting heating element for emergency patches. It basically melted the existing material back together to form a new seal. Nicks went over the suit piece by piece under Dodge's guidance, while Mace tested it with helium. None escaped, proving the repairs were all solid. Despite the dire condition of her gear, Nicks felt that if it held up, she could complete the mission and earn the miner's trust. But another part of her was debating participating in the test at all. Why was she even considering it? Discovering the miner outpost changed her calculus. It was clear the chances of a successful rescue were greatly improved if she gained their support. And though she might be fast enough to take out Kilgore, she wasn't sure she could prevent him or another miner loyal to him from blowing the airlock. A fight might kill everyone in the colony. That would then lower her chances of rescuing the Luna 1 astronauts. She knew this test was fraught, but it was a path she had to walk, literally. The stakes were too high, and time was running out. She looked up at the men and gave them a wide, albeit forced, smile. "Okay, let's do this. Help me suit up." While Mace and Dodge laid out the pieces of her suit, the rest of the miners squeezed into the room. Briggs, a ruddy-faced miner who seemed to be the youngest of the group, appeared to be intoxicated. He stumbled over into one corner to get the best view of Nicks. "We want to watch you get dressed to ensure it's done correctly." He slurred. A wave of muffled laughter rippled through the room. Nothing but a bunch of adolescents, Nicks thought. Hard up and drunk. It was a completely ridiculous request, but the least dangerous part of the whole crazy test. "I don't mind being watched while I dress, but if anyone tries anything, they'll lose a finger, or maybe more." Nicks unzipped her borrowed coveralls and stripped down to her tactical suit, which she had been wearing since they left the base in Argentina. All the men leaned in for a closer look. The suit was so form-fitting it left little to the imagination. However, The scent of her own sweat was strong, and she hoped it would deter any overly eager miners. Mace and Dodge suited her up as if they had done it 1,000 times. They showed no sign of concern, but Nicks was not so sure. Each time she inspected one of the patchwork pieces, she was reminded of the suit's dubious integrity. Once the life support was activated, she was escorted to the airlock by Tanner and Cole, who had also suited up. "What about transportation? I assume you have something I can use?" "Ah, yes," Tanner said. "This should be the fun part." After being processed through the airlock, she was taken to the garage and shown an example of the vehicle she would use. It was called a lunamancer. The lunamancers looked like wind carts, yet they were uniquely tailored for the moon's terrain. Nicks recalled watching a video of men racing similar vehicles called dirt boats across a dried-up lake bed. These vehicles, resembling long, narrow sailboats, featured 3 spring-loaded skids, each equipped with a series of inline wheels set within the skid. These wheels could either bounce on shock absorbers or be locked in place, adapting to various terrains. "Each yacht is controlled by both hand and foot mechanisms," Tanner explained as he sat on the edge of the vehicle. "The sails consist of a dual-layer fabric. One side is coated in prismatic glass, while the opposite side houses photovoltaic cells. The sail harnesses sunlight, powering the electric motors that drive the vehicle. Despite its sailboat appearance, the absence of an atmosphere on the moon meant that the sensation of being propelled across the lunar landscape by wind was purely illusory." Nicks climbed into the cockpit with a sense of resignation. "Out of the frying pan and into the fire," she whispered to herself, gripping the makeshift controls. The steering mechanism was obviously jerry-rigged, with wires hanging loose where they shouldn't be. The cockpit was cramped, the displays flickering inconsistently as she fired up the engines. The steering felt stiff and unresponsive as Tanner helped her maneuver the clunky vehicle out of the hangar. Outside, Kilgore and Garrick waited to give her their final instructions. Cole was maneuvering a second lunamancer into position as a backup. "Those 2 will take point on the high ground," Tanner said. "Keep an eye out for you. If they see Fang and her goons coming, they'll let you know." Something about that part of the plan was immediately suspect, though she harbored doubts about the entire scheme. She eyed Garrick and Kilgore and couldn't help but notice that the suits and vehicles they had selected were in much better condition, clearly indicating that Kilgore was setting her up to fail. There was no sign that they intended to help. Garrick's voice crackled through her suit's spotty comms. "The course should show on your display. The path we've mapped is the fastest," he said, gesturing toward the horizon. "But it takes you over a dangerous ridgeline, with 2 steep craters on either side, to the depot and then back." "If you make it back," Kilgore interjected with a laugh. "I'll make it back," Nicks retorted, her tone defiant. "Don't worry." "I'm not worried," Kilgore quipped, his smile briefly betraying a hint of contempt. "Not in the least." Nicks powered on the vehicle and set off towards the depot. Despite the lunamancer's reluctant cooperation, she found she had a knack for operating the machine. The terrain was unforgiving. Sharp rocks and deep crevices marked the lunar landscape, but she stayed the course, and after about 15 minutes of travel time, she caught sight of her target. Chapter 37. As Nicks approached on her lunamancer, the depot emerged from the horizon. Constructed from geometric panels of dark gray alloy, the building appeared rugged, like the surrounding landscape, perhaps to camouflage it from spying telescopes. Large cargo doors were visible on one side. She killed the engine and coasted closer. As she neared, her eyes caught the glint of a sleek, metallic drone gliding silently around the building. Designed for surveillance, it circled the perimeter with precise bursts of its microthrusters. Its red laser rangefinder and scanning lights swept methodically across the depot and nearby lunar surface. She brought the lunamancer to an abrupt halt several meters away. Intent on disabling the drone before it could detect her, she grabbed a sizable rock and hurled it with precision. The rock struck the drone, sending it careening out of control. It spiraled downward and crashed, the impact kicking up a cloud of regolith that quickly dissipated as the machine's red laser eyes faded out. Using her enhanced strength, she forced open the depot's doors. Inside, rows of fuel cells lay in stacks, just as Kilgore had described. She loaded one onto the lunamancer quickly, mindful that the disabled drone would surely alert Fang to a problem. She turned the lunamancer around, circled the depot, and headed back, being careful to follow her previous tracks. She was about 5 minutes into the return journey when she was startled by the sudden appearance of another lunamancer barreling toward her. It was Kilgore and his right-hand troll Garrick, their intentions clear as they closed the gap. Their vehicle, better equipped, raced up alongside her. As they approached a sharp bend that skirted the edge of a deep crater, Kilgore accelerated, piloting his lunamancer alarmingly close. The metal sides of the two vehicles banged and scraped each other as the two men tried to force Nicks off the treacherous path. "Thought you could turn my men against me, huh, Captain?" Kilgore shouted over the radio. "Trust is obviously not your strong suit," Nicks replied, swerving to avoid another collision. As Nicks took the lead, Garrick resorted to powering up a mining laser they'd mounted on their roll bar. "Fry that fucking clone," Kilgore yelled. Garrick, his face scowling with determination, aimed the dangerous tool at Nicks and fired. The laser beam cut across the lunamancer, scorching the metal skin and damaging the sail. It suddenly sputtered, the power systems flickering ominously. Nicks frantically worked the controls and sail, trying to coax any life from the faltering machine. Despite her efforts, the vehicle, starved of power, drifted helplessly off the path toward dangerous terrain. She wrestled with the steering, but it was too late. The yacht veered sharply, and its skid collided with a rock, sending shockwaves through the machine. She was thrown headfirst out of the vehicle. Nicks rolled into a ditch, while the out-of-control lunamancer careened on toward a massive boulder. It crashed and exploded. Shards of metal blasted the other lunamancer like bullets. One nasty piece of shrapnel struck Garrick, shattering his helmet and killing him instantly. He tumbled lifelessly from his vehicle and rolled to a stop against another large rock that marked his resting place like a tombstone. Kilgore veered away, leaving his dead comrade and Nicks alone in her wreckage. Stunned by the crash, Natalie Nicks remained motionless for a moment before beginning to assess her situation. A distressing alarm sounded within her helmet, warning her to return to the nearest pressurized habitat. Although the suit cushioned her fall, it was now compromised by a small tear, causing a slow yet alarming change in internal pressure. The dangers of the moon, she realized, were ever present. As she scrambled to a sitting position, she searched the suit for damage and quickly discovered the leak, a significant rip above her left knee. It seemed the air pressure and her movements were slowly expanding it. Knowing she had to act fast, she pinched the rip closed, pulled the repair tool from her utility belt, and switched it on. The heating element vibrated in her glove as it warmed up. As she twisted to get in a better position for the repair, the hole widened further. Now it was too large to join back into a seam. After a few seconds of examination, she realized her only viable option, albeit a dreadful one, might just save her life. "Flux, please tell me you're back online." A disturbing silence followed her plea. For the first time she could remember, she missed the damn machine. This was surprising. Was it the loneliness of her dangerous mission, or was she lightheaded from a lack of oxygen? Uncertain, she only knew that she did long for the strange program's camaraderie, as if the AI were one of her teammates. Normally, Flux would regulate her pain receptors. If she proceeded without that adjustment, she would feel every searing touch of the hot plastic. "Here goes nothing," she said, steeling herself. She pressed down and began melting the suit's plastic fabric directly onto her artificial skin. The pain was torturous, akin to being stabbed repeatedly with a butcher knife. The acrid smell of melting plastic mixed with the disgusting smell of her own burning flesh. It wafted up into her helmet. Despite the excruciating pain, she slowly formed a new seal. The agony was so severe she feared she might drop the tool or lose consciousness before finishing the repair. But soon enough, the alarm ceased, indicating the repair had worked. Now, to test it. With her suit crudely sealed, Nicks got to her feet. The damaged lunamancer was of no use now, so she'd have to make the rest of the trip back on foot. She limped along, wary that the repair might not hold. Eventually, the miners' outpost and its main airlock came into sight. So close, yet still too far. Her breaths were harsh in her helmet, her air running low. "You won't take me back to that witch." Kilgore's sneering voice came through the comm. "I won't let you." Nicks paused, scanning ahead. There was Kilgore and his damaged lunamancer, the machine limping back toward the outpost. Maybe she could still beat him back and lock him out for good. If she didn't, would he do the same to her? Ignoring the pain, Nicks pressed on. The patch was holding, so she picked up the pace until she was running at bionic speed. Desperation drove her faster, and the ground seemed to blur beneath her. The fear, it became all she thought about, like heat. She was only meters away from the airlock when Kilgore, true to his word, detonated the charge. The explosion was massive, throwing Nicks back with the force of the blast. A disaster. That was the only thought in Nicks's mind. She wasn't concerned about her own safety at that moment, but overwhelmed by the consequences of what Cyrus had done. If the airlock was truly destroyed, she had doomed herself and the miners counting on her. She tried to stand up and get her bearings, having been blown what seemed like half a football field away from the entrance. The outer airlock hatch lay 20 meters to her left. A twisted ruin crumpled over a grouping of moon boulders. Through the smoke, she spotted a sign of hope. It seemed the inner door had held. It was a welcome miracle, but a temporary one. Emergency alarms and lights flashed near the entrance, showing what remained of the system was failing under the weight of depressurization. Suddenly, to her amazement, she saw movement in her peripheral vision. A team of astronauts coming to the rescue. "Captain Nicks, come in. Can you read me? Over?" It was James Rollins. It had to be another hallucination, she thought. "There. Colonel, she's over there," a second astronaut said. "Natalie, I see you," Rollins said, waving to her vigorously. Thank the Lord above. Despite the strange baritone edge of the Space Force comms, it was music to her ears. Yet it still seemed like a dream. How was he on the moon? "Get back to the miners' outpost if you can. We are resealing the airlock," Rollins said. "If you can't make it, just give me the word and I'm on my way." As Nicks approached, she saw the Space Force team had quickly outfitted the damaged airlock with a new rubberized bladder. One astronaut sprayed a substance around the edges that resembled gray cheese whiz. Behind him, another one smoothed the filler into the cave entrance's cracks with a trowel-like device. Rollins held a rifle in his hands, prepared to enter the outpost. Nicks didn't know whether such guns worked on the moon, but it was an intimidating weapon. "The miners inside are not hostiles," she said to Rollins. "They were controlled, under threat from one man named Cyrus Kilgore. He's the one who blew the airlock." "Copy that," Rollins responded. As his men finished the repair, he signaled for them to enter. "Hawkins, Ortiz, secure the colony. Use force only if our team's life is at risk. There's a mix of hostiles and prisoners inside." Hawkins nodded his understanding, then paused, looking past Rollins and Nicks. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing at something in the distance. A man in a pressure suit was hiding behind rocks some 300 meters to the east of the outpost entrance. "It has to be Kilgore," Nicks said. "He's the only one crazy enough to take off under these circumstances, probably trying to save his own skin." "How to get past us?" Ortiz asked. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing there's another exit, one only he knew about. I can go after him, Nicks offered. They watched the man as he moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows of the terrain. This tactic, perhaps useful on Earth, did little to conceal him here. Tracking him down wouldn't be difficult. Let him go, Rollins commanded. We need to secure the habitat so we can recharge our suits. I don't want to lose you to some pointless foot chase. We've come a long way to find you. That was an understatement of all understatements. She nodded and headed to the airlock. Part 11, Have a Cigar. Chapter 38. Rollins and his Space Force team gathered in the main room of the outpost, quickly converting all available tables into workstations. This would be where they intended to organize the next phase of the mission, sorting intelligence, mapping out the terrain around the Moonbase, and figuring out the best means of infiltrating the base with the least resistance. Nicks felt grateful for the support of Space Force, which brought the first order of business to mind: rescuing the crew of Luna 1. She prayed they were still alive. Rollins hauled in the new communication equipment they had brought along. Power is going to be an issue, he said, looking at the jerry-rigged batteries the miners had strung together. What they have won't keep up with our gear. I did manage to get a fuel cell from the depot. It's not far from the airlock. I can get it. You rest, Rollins said, raising a hand. I don't want to lose you again. I'll send someone else. I'll rest for a bit, but we need to get to the Moonbase as fast as possible. From what the miners say, I think things are a lot worse than we imagine. I've a feeling you may be right, he added. I want to take Fang out, Nicks said, scanning his face. There's no reason she needs a return trip back to Earth. Roger that, Rollins said. As far as I'm concerned, she's proven she's a hostile target. You weren't the only one attacked when you tried to land. Nicks was shocked to hear that revelation. She had assumed Space Force had somehow avoided tangling with the Osiris. Are you telling me your rescue ship was damaged? That's an understatement. We barely made it to the surface. That thing attacked our tail, busted a hole in the fuselage. We'd have to start from scratch to rebuild the whole damn thing if we wanted to use it. God damn this woman, Nicks said. I'm going to pull her apart piece by piece. Make sure she gives you the keys to her lunar lander before you rip her arms off. She's the only one with a vehicle to get us off this damn rock. I'll definitely do that, she laughed. We all need to get home, don't we? He said. Do we? I was just getting used to living in a moon cave with 7 stinking miners. Damn you, Rollins. You sure know how to spoil a girl's fun. Colonel James Rollins introduced his team to the miners, Delta Black Mission Specialists, Mr. Colonel Robert Hawkins and Major Peter Ortiz. Following the quick meet and greet, they explored the outpost and checked and double-checked all the various equipment, tools, supplies, and food available to them. After making a full accounting of everything, they sat back down to more carefully formulate a plan. The oppressive, tyrannical atmosphere within the outpost was replaced with a new camaraderie. The remaining miners were happy to be rid of Cyrus and Garrick, and also very receptive to Rollins and his crew. The hope was that everyone could return home once the crisis at the Moonbase was resolved. Aware of this necessity, the miners appeared eager to offer as much help as possible. As the plans developed, Rollins and Nicks agreed they needed to split into 2 teams. It would be a suicide mission to have everyone confront Fang head-on. The biggest issue is getting close to the base, Rollins said. Luna 1 was built using the old Project Horizon plans. You understand what that means, right? Enlighten me, Nicks replied. Project Horizon was a moon-based design conceived during the height of the Cold War. You know, Khrushchev, Kennedy, Cuban Missile Crisis, and all that. The American government was convinced that the Russians were going to come up here, take over the moon, and have the upper hand militarily for all time. So, the first moon base was designed as a fortified installation, with talk of arming it with a nuclear weapon. Are you saying there's a nuclear bomb up here? Reaper Force just dealt with nukes back on Earth. I'm not ready to face that issue again. No, there aren't any nukes on the moon. But the base was designed to house a nuclear weapon. The entire area around the base is a minefield, littered with anti-personnel devices. Mines? Nicks asked. Are you serious? Why? Yes, I disagreed with that design feature as well, but the Pentagon insisted. They were worried about the exact situation we seem to have at the moment, a takeover of the base by a hostile force. As you can guess, it didn't help in this case, and unfortunately makes recapturing the base that much more complicated. Mines? Actual mines that go boom? Nicks asked. Yes, the kind that will blow your legs off and with 1/6 gravity launch you right off this goddamned rock of a planet. Nicks shook her head. She was familiar with losing body parts to explosives. She wouldn't wish that trauma on anyone. There has to be another way that doesn't involve crossing a minefield. What about the lava tunnels? Dodge asked. Nicks hadn't heard of lava tunnels. Seeing this, Briggs, who had been silently listening, offered an explanation. Lava tunnels are long, hollow tubes. They formed billions of years ago when molten lava flowed under the surface, hardened on the outside, and kept flowing on the inside. Nicks nodded. Basically, caves big enough to walk through? Yes, they're enormous and fan out like a web beneath the lunar surface, Briggs said. He explained they had attempted to explore most of them near the base, but the network was a maze, and it was easy to get lost. We mapped out the most useful ones, Dodge continued. I think we still have those if Cyrus didn't destroy them. He entered the storage room and returned with several long plastic containers. He opened them, revealing wide pieces of plastic rolled up like ancient maps bearing faded gray lines. He pointed to a larger line on the map and traced it with his finger. This was one main tunnel Cyrus and Garrick used to escape Fang. Since then, we sealed it off. It sparked an idea for Rollins. You're certain that tunnel reaches all the way to the Moonbase? Yes, the base was designed to allow access to the network for mining purposes. This one leads right up to the equipment hatch. He pointed to the location on the map. This is where we stored our equipment. The hatch is here, and the pairing station with our battery packs is over here. Pairing station? Nicks didn't understand. Mace, who had been listening closely, leaned in to explain. All miners use drilling tools that pair wirelessly connect to the computer system in the base and to our suit's computerized systems. This allows a supervisor to monitor the battery life on the tools, keep track of our location, and check our vital signs. If there was ever trouble, they would radio for help. We use the system to plan our breaks for recharging and such. And how much effort would it require to unseal the tunnels? Rollins asked. A lot of work, Briggs said. But fortunately, we're the men for the job, and the ones with the tools. We'd only need a few hours to create a safe passage. Perfect, Nicks said. But it sounds like Fang has all the doors, including this one, covered. How do we sneak in without her detecting us? Distraction, Rollins said. What do you have in mind? Nicks asked. I thought we'd knock on the front door. Rollins leaned over the map. His finger traced a route to the Moonbase. What if we send someone directly at the base as a diversion? He suggested. While Fang is focused on that, another team can sneak in through the back, through the equipment hatch on the lowest level. Dodge, rubbing his chin, nodded in agreement. That could work, but we'd need a way to get the first team across the minefield safely. What if we float one of the lunamancers over it using the microthruster arrays? He continued outlining his idea, becoming more animated as he detailed the mechanics. We could rig Garrick's damaged vehicle. It's already a wreck, so if it takes hits, we won't lose much. We attach an array to each corner of the chassis, giving it just enough lift to clear the ground. We'd essentially reduce its weight so it could skim right over the minefield without triggering the mines. Tanner, who liked the idea, raised a finger and added, depending on the buoyancy, we might even reinforce the front or underbelly with some light metal plates. It would essentially act as a layer of armor. Nicks, listening intently, furrowed her brows in skepticism. Microthrusters? Are you sure they can lift a lunamancer? Even if they can, skimming a vehicle over a minefield sounds like a massive risk. Tanner nodded before expanding on the technical aspects. We can rig it so it has a bit of controlled movement. By adjusting the angle of the thrust and using the lunar surface's low gravity to our advantage, you could steer it gently across the surface, making it agile enough to avoid direct contact with visible mines or other obstacles. The lunamancer would move like a hovercraft, Dodge concluded, scanning the others for their reaction to his plan. Rollins gave a short, humorless laugh. It's risky, but with the right timing and some luck, it might divert Fang's attention long enough for the second team to get inside. Dodge said, I think it's the best shot we have at catching Fang off guard. Good. Hopefully, if the distraction works well enough, the tunnel team can breach the equipment hatch before Fang knows we're there, Rollins said. Nicks, you're leading because we need your AI's expertise to crack the security. Nicks didn't say anything, but that was a problem. She hoped Flux would come back online, but there was no sign of that now. She'd have to rely on her other enhancements to break through the airlock. Once we're inside, the lunamancer team will pull back to safer ground, while the tunnel team breaks into two squads, one led by me and the other by Captain Nicks. My team will advance to the communications hub and secure it. I'll use the master override to lock Fang out and control the base's computer systems. Nicks's team will advance into the base. When Fang and her goons are apprehended, they'll secure the lunar lander and rescue the astronauts. You mean if they're alive? Briggs interjected. The room filled with tense glares. I'm just saying Fang is dangerous. She might have killed them, like Cyrus said. What then? We don't plan for failure, kid, Hawkins said. Rollins's intimidating second was a foot taller and several feet wider than Briggs. He looked down at the young miner with contempt. Don't worry until you have something to worry about. Get your head in the game. After that comment, silence fell. Everyone seemed to ponder the same thought. The plan was solid, but would it work? All right, let's iron out the details, Nicks said after a moment had passed. We need this to be tight. If we're doing this, let's make sure there's no room for errors. Chapter 39. Cyrus Kilgore stumbled and bobbed along the dusty lunar trail like a drunken fairy, half floating and half running, hoping beyond hope that no one from the new crew of space soldiers saw him. A phrase his grandfather often said came to mind. The jig was up. He wasn't sure exactly what that meant, but it seemed appropriate for the circumstances. His time ruling the Ryder outpost was over. He'd literally blown his last chance. Or had he? He wasn't even sure whether the explosive had worked the way he'd intended, but whatever had happened, it had stirred the hornet's nest, and it was time to find another home. There was only one option. The Moonbase Luna A1. He scanned the horizon. There was a crater on one side, the ridgeback on the other, and due north was his destination. Approaching the base this way was foolish and perhaps deadly, but he couldn't use the tunnels now. The field, flat as farmland that stretched out in front of the Moonbase for about 100 meters, was booby-trapped. Deadly mines had been buried there to ensure that no one else would take the military secrets hidden within. If he could just make it back to Fang, he would reason with her, lie if necessary, or even beg, hoping she would forgive his previous betrayal and abandonment and allow him sanctuary. He would remind her that having an engineer at her disposal was a strategic advantage. With that fucking Captain Nicks coming for her, he would be a welcome ally. Then, when she was least expecting it, he would take over the base himself. Yes, this was an even better plan than hiding in that stinking cave with the other miners. As soon as he had a clear shot, he would kill that crazy Chinese bitch and, once again, lay claim to his own unique kingdom. Elsewhere, Mouse was hunched over the Dadau's console, his fingers flying across the keys as he calculated the remaining fuel. The numbers weren't good. Not many more orbits left before he'd have to decide whether to return to Earth. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the ticking clock in his head grew louder with each passing second. They didn't have much time. Where was Natalie? Had she made it to the Moonbase? What about Quinn, the crew of Luna 1, and all the other astronauts? Just as he was about to double-check the calculations, the console beeped sharply, interrupting his thoughts. A new message crackled to life, cutting through the silence of the cabin. Mouse's heart skipped a beat. The Osiris deactivation key was finally decrypted. One small miracle. Now, he just needed about a dozen more. Chapter 40. Later, Dodge pulled Nicks aside. She could tell he was having trouble making eye contact with her, a common trait among the miners, but Dodge looked more nervous than usual. "Look, I know I'm probably on your shit list," he said, his voice quaking slightly. "I hate myself for a lot of the choices I made while Cyrus was in charge." "You don't have to justify yourself to me," she said. He held up his hand and nodded. "Yeah, I do. I owe you an explanation. But that's not what this is about," he said. Then he looked her in the eyes. "I want to drive the lunamancer. Hell, we don't even know if we can get it to work," Nick said. "We'll get it to work. I feel it in my bones. And when we do, I want to be the pilot. That's the most dangerous part of this plan. I think it would be best if—" He held up his hand again and said, "What I'm trying to say is, I need to drive. I want you to help me make that happen. I need to do it. I need to do it for myself, but most of all, I need to do it for the men and the others we abandoned to that monster inside the Moonbase. I hope you can understand what I'm trying to say here." Nicks looked at him. Yes, she understood. He wanted to redeem himself. He wanted a chance to do the right thing for once, the courageous thing. She nodded. "I'll tell Rollins." Dodge let out a big sigh. "Thank you, Natalie." She squeezed his arm. "You survived, you know. That was the most important thing." "No, I'm going to disagree with you on that. The most important thing is to do the right thing. There's just too many of us cutting corners these days. Honor and trust and the truth. That's what makes life work. If you don't have that, you don't have much." Nicks looked at him one last time, nodded to show she understood, and then turned to find Rollins. Part 12. Careful with that axe, Eugene. Chapter 41. Nicks led the main team through the lava tunnels. It was slow-moving. The shafts narrowed and then expanded into larger areas that one could drive a truck through, then narrowed again to spaces that required crawling, scraping the tops of their pressure suits along the slick, glass-like walls. In one of the larger ones, a skylight revealed the tunnel's detail to the team. Grooves on the walls showed the different levels of past flows. This one had a rare feature not seen in the others, a pillar shaped with the curves of a woman. It stood as a column, as if it were bracing the passageway open. Along the way, they passed under sharp lava sickles, black, slick, long sloping pieces of hardened stone that jutted out like petrified bat wings. Rollins theorized the eruption point must have come from somewhere far south of the Sea of Tranquility. "There's evidence that these tunnels exist on Mars as well," Rollins said. "Just think, Earthlings might be living in them one day." That seemed like a crazy way to live, but the science was sound. Eventually, the maps proved accurate, and they found their way to the underbelly of the Moonbase. Various pieces of equipment were left along the last stretch of the tunnel. Many of them were covered in the moon dust that seemed to cover everything. Rollins stepped forward, holding one of his secret Delta Black gadgets. He aimed it like a gun and fired a projectile toward the main security camera covering the entrance. black slime splattered the camera lens. Soon the material changed, and the team heard the distinct crack of glass and the crinkling of metal as the glob of plastic hardened and squeezed down on the camera's lens and electronic housing. There was a series of sparks, and the device fell off the door jamb, landing on the ground in front of the equipment hatch's main door. Now, the main surveillance camera was disabled. They were free to move in. Nicks hoped Fang would assume that the camera, or the connection to the camera, had failed or shorted out or something. Since this equipment airlock was rarely used and its encryption was so impenetrable, she also hoped Fang wouldn't worry about a breach, at least not until they were actually breaking inside. By then, it would be too late. Now that they were in position, Rollins radioed Dodge for an update. Dodge juiced the throttle, and his hovering lunamancer crept forward over the gray regolith. When the machine tilted to one side, he winced, expecting to trigger one of the hidden explosives. "Anyone know how many damn mines are out here?" he rambled. It was obvious to everyone, including himself, how nervous he was. "Maybe I'll be lucky enough to skate right through without contact. Wouldn't that be a trick?" "Yes, it would, but the mines might not be the biggest problem," Rollins said over the radio. "In about another 50 meters, you'll clear the last ridge and be headed down the slope into the crater. Once there, she'll see you coming." "That's what we want, isn't it?" "Yes, but you need to be ready," Rollins warned. "She's resourceful. She may have something unexpected up her sleeve." "I'll keep my eyes peeled." "Good, because you're the stick that's about to poke the bear." Dodge knew what Rollins meant, but he didn't want to think about it. He had told Natalie he wanted to volunteer. In reality, he had changed his mind about 100 times since that declaration. Yes, he wanted to be brave, but wanting to be brave and actually showing real courage was something else. He had little practice, and he doubted how long he'd last up here. He was already thinking about turning the whole crazy rig around, if he could even do that, and heading to the dark side of the moon. He was a coward, a runner, even if he didn't have anywhere to run. It was just part of his makeup. But others were depending on him now. He prayed he could surprise himself and maybe, just maybe, make a difference. A good difference, that is. He pointed his tank, as he now called it, in the correct direction and drove forward. Fang looked out over the crater valley and saw a plume of lunar dust on the horizon. She didn't know who was headed her way, but it was obvious someone was coming. She had never doubted this would happen. She had hoped to avoid it by using the Osiris terraformer. Nevertheless, the patriarchy would ensure this would be a battle not only of the sexes, but of worlds. They would not claim this one. She would make sure of it. "How many of them are there?" she asked the man beside her. He was slow to raise his head, but when he did, he told her what seemed to be the truth. 5 miners and 3 new astronauts from Vandenberg, Space Force soldiers. Cyrus Kilgore was bleeding from a gash over his eye thanks to one of her chimeras, but when he looked up at her, he smiled. And that awful woman. Fang was intrigued. "There's a female astronaut?" "Captain Natalie Nicks," he replied. "She's your biggest problem. Let me live and I'll help you kill her." Fang turned and nodded at the man. "So, you still want to work with me after all the running and hiding? After the beating you just received?" "Yes. I've always believed I was meant for great things," he said, laughing almost a giggle. "You and I are not that different, you know." "You are very wrong about that," she said with a sneer. "But here's where you are right. You could still do great things. Tell me everything you know about Natalie Nicks, and I promise you, I'll put you to good use." Nicks positioned herself in front of the equipment airlock, her fingers hovering over the keypad as she tried to summon her AI assistant. "Flux, initiate decryption sequence," she commanded softly, her voice tense in the silence that followed. No response came. The program remained eerily silent. She tried again, increasing the urgency in her voice. "Flux, respond! I need a security bypass now. Still, nothing. Her attempts to engage Flux met only with the cold, unyielding silence of technology refusing to cooperate. Frustration mounting, Nicks turned to Rollins, her expression grim. My AI isn't responding. Looks like it's going to be brute force, she admitted, her hands clenching into fists as she prepared to use her bionic strength to pry open the hatch. Just as she squared her shoulders to force it, her communicator crackled to life with the sound of a thunderous explosion. Dodge's strange floating vehicle moved along the flat lunar basin as efficiently as a hockey puck on ice, until it hit one of the steep rills and tilted to the starboard side. One of the thin metal plates they'd attached as armor raked across the rock, screeching like nails on a chalkboard. Dodge manipulated the joystick on the thruster control. The hiss of the pressurized propellant was audible even inside his suit. As the port quarter sank, the starboard bow of the lunamancer righted itself. He hit the throttle and continued on for several glorious minutes. He couldn't believe it was working so well. The tank rumbled along, closing in on the perimeter of the base, crested a sloping hill, and descended the other side. He didn't see the cairn of rock until it was too late. He hit the jerry-rigged brakes, trying to stop the advance of the tank. But he hadn't stopped soon enough to avoid the stack of stones. The edge hit it hard enough to topple it over, and the falling rocks were enough to detonate the first landmine. The explosion was so loud and shook his rig so hard that Dodge was sure it had taken out half of his machine. However, when the smoke and dust cleared and he scanned the debris field, he saw he was still in business. The tank was unharmed, with the thrusters still intact and operational. There was a new crater from the explosion, but that would not be a problem. He could hover right over it. In short, he'd triggered the first of the mines, but he and his tank had survived. He took a deep breath, reported what had happened, and pressed on. He had to keep going. The game was on now. Fang would know they were coming, and everything hinged on him keeping all the attention on the topside attack. Fang's heart skipped a beat when she heard the explosion and saw the lunamancer for the first time. It relentlessly advanced toward her base. How was this possible? She had banked on the minefield to obliterate such threats, yet her enemy marched forward, undeterred. Had she erred in her calculations? Overconfidence in her defenses, perhaps? The very notion of this machine breaching the base seemed ludicrous. But if it triggered one of the closer mines and exploded, the shrapnel could be catastrophic to parts of the base's hull. Why do men resort to such barbaric solutions? She complained, frustration evident in her voice. The assault had no strategic merit. Was it a desperate kamikaze endeavor, or was there a piece of the puzzle she was missing? Pondering over the madness driving the man in the lunamancer towards her sanctuary, Fang resolved that offense would be her best defense. She pictured the vehicle as a rogue billiard ball, careening across a lunar pool table, and pondered what could redirect its trajectory. With the Osiris out of play, only one option remained. A wave of panic washed over her at the thought, but it quickly gave way to resolve. Reflecting on the high-stakes gamble, she soothed herself with visions of a future where the moon was a thriving colony under her control. In this new world, Earth's cancerous patriarchy would die, eclipsed by her brighter world. With the ancient adage, "burn your ships," echoing in her mind, Fang turned to the control panel, her fingers dancing over the interface to unleash her chosen countermeasure. The airlock had two solid doors, double if not triple the size of a regular entrance to the base. All the gaskets and components were made of heavy stainless steel, likely the heaviest pieces brought from Earth. Nicks imagined they might be vulnerable to a brute force attack from outside, but that would mean compromising everything and everyone inside the base. So, they had to be smart about it. Patron. Nicks looked over her shoulder at Rollins. We're going to have to get in the hard way. Break it open manually, Nicks said. Rollins nodded and moved beside her. How about a little help? Nicks gave him a quick thumbs up. You take that side, she directed. I'll push up on this crank, you pull down. You want to count it off? Yeah, on 3. Ready? He nodded. 1, 2, 3. Nicks planted her feet and pushed upward on the locking ring. She felt her augmented muscles strain, but nothing budged for a long time. It was as if she was pushing against a mountain. My hands are slipping, he said. I can't get a good grip on this thing. I'm having the same problem, she complained. Let's readjust and try again. They stopped, rested for a moment, shook out their hands and feet, then tried again. After a few seconds, there was a grinding noise from the locking mechanism, and the ring turned. Shit, you're doing it, Rollins shouted. Keep going, it's working. The handwheel moved again, gaining momentum as if the tumblers within a rusty lock had finally broken free. As Dodge drove north and approached Luna 1, it became clear that the base was designed much like a traditional castle. It was surrounded by tall walls of lunar soil, except where it backed into the crater. A long, narrow moat lay at the base of the wall, and a wide, retractable bridge lay across it. The path across the bridge disappeared into a tunnel that served as both an entrance and an airlock. He steered the lunamancer straight for the bridge. Clearly visible behind the wall and to the east, nestled next to the tall command tower, was a large, mushroom-shaped storage unit. As he got closer, he saw the cap of the mushroom retract, revealing a clamshell piece of metal that protected the base's lunar lander from the harsh environment. At least now he knew where the lander was stored, he thought to himself. This was good because, as he understood it, it was their only way home at the moment. They needed that vehicle. Oh shit, goddammit, Dodge yelled over the comms. That crazy bitch is taking off. What? What are you seeing? Tanner asked. The lander. Someone's activated it. She must be trying to escape. I mean, why the hell else would she? Oh, fucking God's balls. Dodge, what's happening? Do you have eyes on Fang? Rollins yelled. He didn't exactly have eyes on her, but he couldn't miss the large piece of NASA machinery orienting itself straight at him. She wasn't escaping. She was going to ram him. It was a game of chicken, and he couldn't get out of the way. I think I have it, Nicks muttered under her breath as she exerted pressure on the handwheel with her cybernetic strength. She was making discernible progress. The lock inched open with each determined rotation. From her earpiece, Dodge's panicked voice broke through, reporting to Rollins. The lander is coming straight at me! Suddenly, the mother of all explosions erupted topside. Everyone heard it and then felt the shockwave rumble through the tunnel. For Nicks, there was an especially dreadful detail. A man screaming as he died. A sound only her enhanced hearing could detect. Nicks froze for a split second. Rollins met her gaze. It was obvious they both understood the terrible truth. Dodge was gone. Chapter 42. Quinn and Green paced the small cell for what seemed like the millionth time. Where were their bloody guards? They had finally agreed if one of the Chimera clones came to take them, they would fight, even to the death if necessary, all in the hope that they might overcome their captors and escape. It was a desperate plan, but it was the only card they had to play. The grim silence was suddenly shattered by a deep, distant explosion that rocked the base. The floor quaked beneath their feet, and the cell door rattled violently. Quinn and Green exchanged a sharp look, their hearts racing as the lights flickered and the steady hum of power wavered. Then, the generators cut out, plunging the room into near darkness. Green's eyes widened as hope flickered. We've got no power, at least for a minute while the fuel cells and generators cycle back on, she said, a flicker of hope in her voice. She froze, waiting for a sign she was right. And then, with a simple click, the cell door popped open, released by the power failure. Without hesitation, they stumbled out of the cell and into the corridor, leaning on each other for support, pushing through the agony of their injuries. Green's mind raced ahead, grasping at one possible advantage. If the power outage affected the locks here, it should have done the same for the rifle storage locker, she said, her voice laced with determination. We might be able to get those guns now. Quinn nodded, ignoring the throbbing in her limbs as she pushed forward. It might be a long shot, but she would take any chance they could find to fight back. Chapter 43. The power cycled on and off as Fang watched the explosion with a sense of satisfaction. She had stopped the assault on her base, but also destroyed the one vehicle that might get her home. Anyone else would be frightened by the sacrifice, but she thrilled at the thought. Now there was no turning back. As a sense of satisfaction washed over her, she heard the first alarm sound. She had heard it before, but it had been such a long time, she wasn't sure what it meant. She pulled up the system's activity monitor and read the dialog box. It was a suit pairing alarm. A suit pairing? What was that? Oh yes, of course. Astronauts using drilling tools had to pair or wirelessly link their tools' programs to the pressure suit's computers. Once it was done, it stored the parameters and astronaut data in the memory of both devices, much like a smartphone remembers to connect to the owner's preferred Wi-Fi. There was no need to go through the entire process each time you picked up a bulky moon tool. The suit recognized it immediately. Now the system was saying miner number 8 was paired with a nearby core sampling drill. That was a malfunction. It had to be. It was impossible for a suit to pair with one of those tools. Unless that miner was in the equipment airlock, the hidden back entrance to the base that she assumed no one else knew about. Fang pulled up the appropriate video feed. She'd hidden the camera herself just to be thorough, but hadn't used it since. Now she was grateful she'd had the foresight to install it. She cued the video stream on her monitor, and her intuition was confirmed. An entire team of astronauts was attempting to break into the base. She smiled. Their ingenuity was surprising and admirable. However, ultimately, sneaking into the base was a foolish ploy. Even if they could breach the equipment hatch, they were outmatched. Her growing cohort were now equipped with the upgraded exoskeletons, and a new generation of more were only hours from being processed. This made the Moonbase a veritable fortress. It had to be to protect the precious things gestating inside. No one would ever take from her again, not even these industrious interlopers. She would trap them and convert them into the biomatrix substrate the clones fed upon. Though murdering more people was counter to her purpose of populating this barren world, she would defend her children and their nest. For now, she was a mother first and foremost. Looking at the situation, she was struck with inspiration. The means to slow them down was obvious. She didn't need conventional weapons to solve this problem. Everything she needed was right there in the storage tunnel. The tools that had paired with the suits were more than just tools. They could be weapons if used in that way. She scrolled through her list of applications, found the proper programs, and opened them on her computer terminal. Yes, this was perfect. They wouldn't see this coming. She selected the laser mounted on the first excavator, set it to just below maximum heat and maximum power. She adjusted its range, targeted the closest astronaut, selected him as the drilling target, and turned the drill on. Nicks noticed the laser first. It appeared in a flash, orange like an animal's eye, crawling across the metal surface of the airlock just above her head. Tanner, the miner bringing up the rear, shouted in confusion. "What the hell is that?" Then he screamed as the beam of energy burned straight through him and onward, straight through Cole, who was standing only a meter in front of him. Blood, smoke, guts, and human ash exploded outward from the strange combination of the injuries and suit breaches, splattering grotesquely over everything. The survivors milled about for a few moments, dumbfounded, in shock and unsure of what had happened. It was several more seconds before they collectively understood they were being attacked by one of the mining tools. "Someone's turned on the thermal lasers," Briggs yelled. Yes, and it had drilled right through the doomed miners, killing 2 of their teammates. Cole and Tanner had both been burned alive from the inside out and eviscerated in one gory instant. The excavator, holding the laser drill, pivoted. Seemingly alive, it appeared to target the next closest astronaut, one of the Space Force soldiers, Major Ortiz, who quickly took cover behind a stack of spare roofing tiles. Without warning, the team's well-coordinated mission had devolved into complete chaos as the miners and soldiers scrambled to save their lives. Briggs quickly assessed the situation. "We need to cut the power to all the machines," Briggs yelled, pointing to the power lines running along the tunnel walls. "That will kill the laser." Hawkins, Delta Black's seasoned second-in-command, nodded in agreement, his mind obviously racing through tactical options. "Copy that. Do you have wire cutters?" he asked, his voice echoing through the comms. "Yes, over there." Briggs pointed again, this time at a large tool chest against the wall in between 2 of the excavators. Hawkins darted forward, one eye on the laser and one on the tool chest. In a matter of seconds, he was running back with a pair of oversized bolt cutters, aiming to sever the power lines. As if sensing interference, the excavator with the massive trench digger attachment swiveled its machine body towards Hawkins. As its motor fired to life, it rolled forward, chasing him. The trencher's blades came to life. Colossal metal teeth meant to cut through the moon's crust spun like a gigantic chainsaw and slowly closed in on Hawkins and Briggs. Nicks turned back to the team. As she watched them struggle with the mining tools, her cybernetic ears picked up a strange noise. It was the faint whirl of a servo motor and the swiveling of its fine machinery. In the corner of her eye, she saw the glint of the lens, the sound's source. The black glass was expertly camouflaged and recessed in the wall opposite the airlock. It was a video camera, moving from right to left, following the action of the rogue laser cutter as it slashed and burned like a lightsaber, trying to take out another member of her team. "Rollins!" she shouted. "We've been made." "Roger that," he said, looking past her. "I see the damn thing, but it's too late to do anything about it. Keep working on that door." Rollins was right. If they were going to survive, they had to get into that base. And she was about to use every ounce of strength her bionic parts could generate to open the airlock. Or she was going to die trying. She glanced over her shoulder and looked at the hidden camera one last time. "I'm coming for you, Fang. Get ready." Fang was astonished to see her plan to use the tools as weapons working so well. The aftermath of the laser attack was gruesome, a sight she found wasteful. The biological material, while inferior to what she was cultivating, was as rare and precious as gold on the moon. After the conflict, she would send a pair of the synthetics to retrieve the bodies of this assault team. The entire remains would be harvested and added to a new batch of substrate. She focused the hidden camera on Natalie Nicks, who was working on the equipment hatch. Her tenacity was remarkable. She was forcing the airlock open by her own strength. How would she do against the excavator? Fang issued a new command, and another machine came to life. Amid the menacing sizzles and zaps of the thermal laser, Briggs and Hawkins moved along the tunnel wall, cutting the power cables. "Keep at it just a bit more," Hawkins barked. Finally, with a well-placed snip, Briggs cut through the last cable, and the laser and its excavator shuddered to a halt. The laser's eye flickered out, and the machine's articulated arm dropped lifelessly. The 2 men exchanged a quick, relieved glance. Mission accomplished. Suddenly, the trencher's blades sliced through the air, striking Hawkins. He grunted as the spinning teeth tore into his suit, and a spray of his own blood splattered inside his helmet. "I'm hit," he gasped, clutching his side where a dark, seeping wound now marred his suit. Without wasting a second, Briggs rushed to Hawkins's side, his hands shaking as he pulled a can of sealant from his belt. He quickly sprayed the gray foam into the hole in Hawkins's suit, the substance expanding rapidly to seal the breach and stabilize the wound. Hold on, just hold on, Briggs urged, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. Rollins watched over his shoulder as the attack escalated. The team was in a panic. Briggs and Hawkins had stopped the laser, but Hawkins was down. Briggs was helping him, but that left both of them vulnerable. Ortiz was doing everything he could to stop the trench cutter from attacking Hawkins and Briggs. Meanwhile, Mace faced off against a third excavator that had unexpectedly activated. This crawler was equipped with a versatile, articulated arm tipped with a rotary auger, designed to drill massive holes deep into the lunar surface. The auger was spinning now. The massive metal drill threatened to impale anything in its path. It was inching closer to the equipment hatch, fixated on killing Nicks. Rollins realized that either he or Nicks had to intervene or they would all die. He reluctantly abandoned Nicks. Turning away from the airlock, he joined Mace to confront the auger. "We have to get on top of it," Mace shouted. "Rip out its battery. That will stop it in its tracks." Rollins gave Mace the thumbs up and did his best to juke around the oncoming machine. Bounding off a small equipment crate, he went airborne and clattered back down onto the end of the excavator. The battery was held in place, on the back, by two thin metal brackets. "Just kick it out of its chassis," Mace yelled. As Rollins moved into position, the machine swung wide toward Mace. Mace was thrown off balance and stumbled until he fell. The machine swiveled again, bringing its massive drill bit down on Mace's head. Pieces of helmet and bloody gore flew, spattering over everyone and everything within a few meters. Rollins growled in frustration and, kicking with all his might, finally dislodged the machine's battery. The excavator came to a sudden halt, pinning poor Mace's corpse in place. Having heard the plan over comms, Ortiz followed suit, dislodging the trencher's battery. And within seconds, that machine was dead too. Rollins and Ortiz then helped Briggs carry Hawkins to the hatch, where Nicks was still working on the airlock. "We have to get inside fast," Rollins said. "Hawkins is bleeding out." Nicks looked over at the soldier. Someone had sprayed a gray foam sealant over the gash in Hawkins's suit, but there was blood everywhere. Nicks gave it all she had and yanked one more time, and the airlock finally cracked. When the door swung open, the team scrambled inside. Chapter 44. "We can't stay here forever, Katrina," Quinn whispered, her voice laced with urgency. Green nodded, her gaze never leaving the small, improvised viewing slit they had created in their barricade. "Okay, on 3, she mouthed, gripping the lunar rifle. 1, 2, 3. They burst from their cover, Quinn leading with Green right on her heels. The clone, surprised by their sudden appearance, barely had time to raise its weapon before Quinn's first shot hit its mark. The woman staggered, but didn't fall, her inhuman resilience on full display. Green didn't hesitate. She dove forward, rolling to the side to avoid incoming fire, and unleashed a volley of her own. Her shots found their target, and the clone collapsed, the life fading from its genetically engineered eyes. Without catching their breath, they raced down the corridor. "Bloody hell! I'm almost out of ammo," Quinn said. "Me too," Green said. "Never knew we'd need so much. Fuck. Now what?" "You know this place best. We need to cut down through the maintenance shaft. It's faster," Green said, leading Quinn toward a narrow access panel discreetly placed against the wall. Quinn nodded, following Green as she expertly pried open the panel, revealing the tight, vertical shaft behind it. The descent would be dangerous, but with the clones on the move, staying here was no longer an option. Fang paced in front of her main control panel. Despite her efforts to kill off the intruders, she'd only thinned their numbers. A confrontation inside the base now seemed inevitable. Using the exoskeleton interface, she radioed the oldest Chimera. She ordered her to take a group of the most mature synthetics to confront the invaders on the lower levels, anticipating a less challenging cleanup afterward. "Use the dart guns," Fang said. "A dose of the paralytic will stop them and prep them nicely for the Matrix." In the airlock, Natalie Nicks let the fresh, pressurized air wash over her, a sensation almost as rejuvenating as a hot shower. Finally, she was breathing something other than the stale oxygen from inside her suit. She tossed her helmet into the corner and stripped down to her tactical uniform, which had become ripe and grimy from the extended wear. Life on the moon was proving not to be to her liking. It felt like an extended camping trip in a national park, complete with serviceable facilities like toilets and showers, yet everything was coated in a layer of grime and dirt, a far cry from the luxury of the Sunset Tower Hotel. She reminisced about her night in that luxury suite, wishing she had simply closed the window, ignored Reaper Force, and crawled back into bed with Byrne. Catching Rollins's eye for a moment, she noticed a slight grin. "Ain't this fun?" he asked in a sarcastic voice, attempting to lighten the mood. Despite their success in entering the airlock, they faced another door before they could access the base proper. Freed from her bulky pressure suit, Nicks felt more confident in tackling this next challenge. As she reached for the inner handwheel to open the next hatch, an alarm blared. A piercing sound, accompanied by flashing red lights, turned the airlock into a makeshift disco. "I'm guessing that's not the doorbell," Nicks quipped, trying to inject some of her own humor into the tense situation. "Well, at least it's official. She knows we're here," Rollins replied, shaking his head in frustration. He stepped forward, crowding her to look through the portal. "God damn it, we're losing our secret agent badges when we get back." A few minutes later, as they neared the comms hub, Nicks and her team spotted a lone figure in a Luna 1 uniform stumbling toward them from a side passage. She was holding her side and looked to be bleeding. She immediately appealed for help. "Please, they're after me," she gasped, clutching at the wall as if to steady herself. The team exchanged quick glances. Then Nicks approached her cautiously to see what help they could offer. She had barely taken a step when another woman abruptly emerged from the shadows, holding a rifle. "Move away from her now," the newcomer demanded, swinging her rifle up to cover the bleeding woman. Startled, Nicks turned, prepared to confront this new threat. Before she could act, the situation took another unexpected turn. A second woman appeared who, with a swift, expert motion, swept Nicks' legs from under her, sending her crashing to the ground. In the brief moment Nicks was down, her assailant hit the bleeding woman with shocking brutality, smashing her hard in the head with the butt of the rifle. Nicks scrambled to her feet, heart pounding, only to freeze in shock. It was Quinn. "Sorry, love," Quinn breathed out, "but these bloody clones have really pissed me off. I shot this one, but she was about to get away, and that just won't do." She gestured toward the other newcomer, who stood calmly aside. "This is Katrina Green, a real Luna 1 crew member." Nicks lunged at Quinn, wrapping her arms around her in a tight, loving embrace. "I'm so happy to see you," she said. "So goddamn happy." Gratitude mingled with adrenaline as Nicks embraced Quinn tightly, the emotional relief of their reunion grounding her for one energizing moment. Then, without missing another beat, they moved collectively down the hallway toward the comms hub. Once inside the comms hub, the atmosphere was immediately tense. The small, cluttered space was lined with screens, each panel flickering with streams of data. The hub barely accommodated everyone. Green, Quinn, Nicks, Rollins, Briggs, and Ortiz were squeezed in. Despite the cramped quarters, the team worked quickly to make room for Hawkins, who direly needed medical attention. Rollins found an emergency medical kit tucked under a console, and they carefully sedated Hawkins to manage his pain before treating his wound with the sterile supplies. With Hawkins sedated and resting as comfortably as possible on a makeshift cot, Ortiz set to work on the terminals, his fingers flying over the keyboards to wrest control of Luna 1's systems back from Fang. Quinn, while watching Ortiz's efforts, briefed Nicks on everything she knew. "When you guys started your assault, Fang ramped up her security measures. She's not just locking down sections, she's prepping for all-out war," Quinn explained. As Quinn relayed the last of her information, an alarm blared from one of Ortiz's screens. A voice spoke from the overhead speakers. It echoed into the room, giving it a haunting feeling. "This is a message to the men and women who just entered the Moonbase, those I'm watching now in the communications hub. I'm giving you a one-time offer. If you surrender, you will be escorted back out of the facility and unharmed." "And if we don't?" Nicks asked, looking up at the camera in the room's corner. "I'm afraid that's an unacceptable outcome, Captain Nicks. This facility houses my life's work. Science and research that will change the destiny of all women everywhere. It cannot and will not be compromised by you or any of your team. If you don't leave, you will be terminated." Nicks shook her head. "Dr. Fang, you may be new to this, but we aren't. We've heard threats like this many times before. Usually the people that make them end up in jail or dead." Fang ignored Nicks. "I'll give you 10 minutes to reconsider your options and leave. After that, my security force will be ordered to terminate and pacify the threat." "I can save you the countdown," Nicks said. "We represent the United States of America and have come a long way to rescue our astronauts. We're not leaving without them. 10 minutes, Captain Nicks. The clock starts now." A new alarm blared, and Ortiz turned back to Nicks and grimaced. "She's cut the life support to the lower levels," Ortiz announced, his tone grave as he stared at the computer screen. "We've got less than 20 minutes of air left down here before it runs out." The team exchanged grim looks, the weight of their situation settling in. The clock was indeed ticking. "I guess she doesn't like your decision," Rollins quipped. "I guess you're right," Nicks agreed. She took a deep breath. "Ortiz, do whatever you have to do to get those systems back," she said. "The rest of us will take care of Fang. But first, we need a plan." The team leaned in close, whispering ideas to one another. Each moment was precious now. It was a race against time to save not only themselves, but potentially everyone else trapped on Luna 1. Amidst the flurry of planning, a crackle of static abruptly cut through the air, drawing the team's attention to the radio system. When Ortiz tuned the frequency, the familiar voice of Mouse broadcasted a desperate plea. "This is Dr. Ken Park calling any survivors on Luna 1. We need to establish contact immediately. Please respond if you receive this." Nicks's heart leapt in her chest at the sound of Mouse's voice. Relief and joy washed over her. "Mouse, it's Natalie," she responded. "I've got Quinn and others here, but we're far from safe. Fang still has control of the base." "Thank goodness you're alive. I was so damn worried," Mouse said. "What about the lander? Can you guys get back to the Dodo?" Nicks glanced at Rollins, who was hunched over the console, his expression grim. "I'll let Rollins explain that part," she said. "Right now, we can't even think about getting off this rock. Fang has declared war on us. We have to survive what comes next." With no time to waste, a plan was formed to recapture Luna 1. Everyone had a new job or mission. It was agreed that a small team would advance through the base and confront Fang. Quinn and Green agreed to lead the way. Ortiz would stay with Hawkins and work on retaking the base's systems. Mouse was informed of their strategy. Finally, Rollins gave Briggs a secret mission. "Listen, son, this might be the most important part of our little war here." Rollins leaned over Briggs, whispering the plans so as not to alert Fang to the new strategy. "Go back the way we came, and get to work immediately. Work like our lives depend on it, because they do." After another minute of secret discussion, Briggs slipped out of the hub and headed for the equipment airlock back the way they'd come. The rest of the group discussed the next phase of their plans until it was clear. Nicks opened the door and waved the team forward. It was time to confront Fang. Chapter 45. Everyone now understood the base had 3 main levels, and they had entered on the lowest one. Their adversary was on the highest level in the Godforge lab. Ortiz barricaded himself, along with Hawkins, inside the comms hub. Nicks, along with Quinn, Green, and Rollins, spilled into the hallway and advanced cautiously toward the east end of the corridor. As they passed the spot where they had left the dead Chimera clone, Nicks noted with a chill that the body was gone. "Fang's taken it," Quinn said grimly. "It's twisted," Green added with disgust. "She's repurposing them. That's what she calls it. Using any corpse she can get her hands on for her sick experiments instead of disposing of them properly." Ascending to the second level of the base, the air was thick with tension, but the space was empty and soundless. However, that eerie silence was abruptly shattered when the team moved down the hall to the final set of stairs. Suddenly they were attacked by a squad of Chimera clones who were armed and waiting behind an improvised barricade. The team quickly pulled equipment into the hallway, creating an improvised barrier of their own. As they were forming the line, Green cried out. She'd been hit. Shot? Nicks wasn't sure, but she stumbled and spilled onto the floor. Nicks raced to her side and helped Green up. As Green stood, she reached down. There was a dart of some kind embedded in her back. Nicks wondered what the point of the weapon was, until the strange dart powered on. There was a charge of electricity as a tiny plunger activated, and the contents of the dart drained into Green. Green immediately slurred her words, stumbled, and then collapsed. Nicks grabbed her by the ankle and pulled her to cover behind their improvised barricade. It seemed the woman had fallen dead, but when Nicks reached down and touched Green's neck, she felt a strong pulse along her carotid artery. She'd been tranquilized. It was the only thing that made sense. Seconds later, more darts whizzed overhead. "Take cover!" Nicks yelled. One dart hit her in the arm and immediately went through its strange mechanical routine. But to no effect. The dart didn't have easy access to her bloodstream from this area of her body. Had it hit original tissue, she'd be on the floor just like Green. Quinn checked Green's pulse one more time, then began pulling her back toward the stairs. "I'll fall back to the comms hub with her," Quinn shouted over the battle, her eyes locking with Nicks's. "Get this under control. I'll catch up." Nodding, Nicks felt a surge of resolve despite the odds. "Be quick," she called back, turning her attention to the clones. More sedative darts whistled through the air. Rollins ducked one, rolling back behind cover, while Nicks deflected another with the side of her arm. Two Chimera clones wielding large daggers, tools the lunar miners called thermal blades, charged at her from their hiding spots. Reacting instantly, Nicks deftly dodged an arcing blade. She used a devastating elbow strike to take out the first clone before executing a precise judo throw on the second, sending that one crashing to the ground. Behind her, Rollins grunted, landing a solid hit on a third clone, but it barely staggered. Nicks knew they couldn't keep this up indefinitely, but there was no other choice but to fight. As a fourth clone advanced, she countered with a swift Krav Maga maneuver, grabbing the clone's wrist, twisting forcefully to disarm it, then delivered a powerful knee strike to incapacitate her attacker. The clone went down. Despite her effective defense, the clone sliced through her tactical suit during the scuffle. The blade somehow ripped through the tough material, revealing her already exposed cybernetic components underneath. Meanwhile, two more clones surprised Rollins with a coordinated attack. One clone swept Rollins's legs, toppling him to the cold, hard floor. Before he could recover, another struck him hard on the head. Dazed by the blow, he was quickly overwhelmed. The women turned on Nicks and fired a volley of tranquilizer darts, sending her diving for cover. Satisfied she was effectively pinned down, two clones seized the incapacitated Rollins and carried his limp body away from the skirmish. Nicks glimpsed them disappearing down a corridor, presumably heading toward Fang's lair. With that move, Nicks was now effectively alone. Before chasing after Rollins, she took a moment to assess her bionics. The damage she'd accumulated on this trip to the moon was significant. She had sustained injuries during the fight in the Dadao, during her race with Cyrus, and now in this battle inside the Moonbase. Each bit of trauma had stripped away her facade, revealing her true nature. Part human, part futuristic cyborg. She was a walking testament to the monstrous fusion of flesh and technology, forged for war and killing. Her own kind of horror. Fang thinks she's terrorizing us, she chuckled darkly. Wait till she gets her eyes on me. Fang watched on her monitor as the squad of Chimeras dragged one man deeper into Luna 1. The female who was left behind was a fighter and seemed to have the power to give her daughters a run for their money. Fang had deployed a squad to secure her, and that was proving insufficient. She had been told this woman was special. But now it was obvious why. Natalie Nicks was also a machine. How was that possible? She froze for several seconds, taking in what she saw. As the new information wound its way through the corridors of her genius-level intelligence, her vision of the future shifted ever so slightly. This woman, Captain Natalie Nicks of the United States Army, was a revelation, and perhaps even more proof that women could take the place of men effectively through the use of intelligently applied science. Cybernetic enhancements, coupled with her genetic improvements, could speed up the evolution of Luna's new citizens. Now she knew she couldn't kill this woman. Instead, she had to study her, improve on who she already had revealed herself to be. No wonder her benefactor had given her intelligence about this small Defense Intelligence Agency task force. It had seemed like extraneous material, research overkill. But sure enough, here was proof it had been right on the money. America had sent their most technologically advanced fighting team. This spy with the codename Viper was just as glorious as all the information had said. What wonders were hidden within her? A master race of superhuman women, empowered by high-tech cybernetics, would create an unstoppable force able to protect its homeland from all invaders. But first, she needed to finish what she'd started. She would contain the current threats. Then she would turn back to Natalie Nicks. She couldn't wait to dissect her and uncover all her mysterious secrets. Back at the fight, and just as the situation seemed bleakest, all of the clones unexpectedly halted their attack. In unison, as if receiving a silent command, they retreated, melting back into the shadows with a mechanical precision that was unsettling. Nicks, panting from the exertion and on high alert, watched them disappear with a mix of relief and suspicion. Her instincts screamed that this sudden withdrawal was too strategic, too timed to be anything but a calculated move. She scanned the hallway for any sign of danger, her senses tingling with the anticipation of what might come next. She was certain this was a maneuver by Fang to lure her deeper into a more controlled environment, a classic tactical retreat to entice the prey into the predator's den. She was walking into a trap, but there was no choice but to press forward. With a deep breath, she steeled herself and advanced cautiously. Part 13. Atom Heart Mother. Chapter 46. Nicks walked deeper into Luna 1, up a narrow, dimly lit stairwell that spiraled tightly into the heart of the base. Expecting more cold metal and harsh lights at the next level, she was instead greeted by an astonishing sight as she emerged on level 3. The stark artificiality of the Moonbase had transformed into a lush, verdant paradise. Plants of all varieties flourished under softly glowing lights, their leaves vibrant and full of life. The air here was warm and humid. Gentle mists drifted from hidden irrigation systems, creating a fine dew that shimmered on the greenery. Nicks wandered through rows of tall green beans climbing slender trellises, leafy spinach spreading across the walls, and bright strawberries peeking out from their hanging baskets, all growing with an unnatural vigor that suggested genetic acceleration. Fang must have employed advanced techniques to cultivate such rapid growth. As she walked through the biome, the room was bathed in magenta-colored LED lights that cast a surreal pink hue over everything. Sweet potato vines, along with various plants and stems, covered every surface, thriving under the artificial illumination. Computers controlled a nutrient-rich liquid that occasionally dripped into the hydroponic substrate, supporting the lush growth. Nicks understood these plants were part of what the brief on the Moonbase had called bioregenerative life support, a prototype system designed not only for food production but also for scrubbing carbon dioxide and recycling water. A speaker came to life with the sound of Fang's voice. "Natalie Nicks, welcome. If your intent is hostile, you will die. If your intent is benevolent and you wish to help in my effort to protect this fledgling colony, you can live. The choice is yours. I offer it to no one else in your party. However, they must leave. They have no place here." Nicks moved through the jungle. That was the only term that seemed to fit where she was, and touched and examined the extraordinary variety of plants. In one section, she found a grapevine. It was weighted down by plump fruit that glistened from the misty air that had condensed on its taut skin. She wondered if they had it wrong. What this woman had created here was amazing. How could this be dangerous? She'd grown a paradise out of nothing, in a fraction of the normal time. It was a miracle of science. Did someone with this skill and ability deserve to be locked up in a prison cell somewhere, or worse, killed? The extraordinary world she'd just stepped into confused her. It made little sense. Nearing the entrance to the Godforge lab, the door slid open silently, revealing another vista. Nicks paused at the threshold, peering into a space that, while continuing the theme of botanical growth, suggested experiments of a different kind. What she saw was beyond anything she could have prepared for, a sharp departure from the natural beauty she had just walked through. Inside, the horrors she glimpsed showcased a madness much like what she and Rollins had found on Devon Island. Everywhere Nicks looked, she saw clone pods hanging from the lattices like fruit. They were laid out in methodical rows, with the youngest or smallest bodies toward the back of the strange garden. A row of about 10 to 12 embryonic sacs, about the size of small pumpkins, contained fetuses. The closer ones had full-grown human beings. All of them had pairs of breasts, confirming they were all women. It seemed Fang called them synthetics. Nicks preferred the term clone. But these god-forsaken creatures knew themselves as Chimera. The clone farm was both disturbing and amazing. She couldn't process what she was seeing. Surely these creatures weren't alive. Or were they? If so, how? Nicks forced herself to look past the growing synthetics to examine the structure of the garden. Tubes of pink-orange fluid fed each of the embryonic pods from a central reservoir. That reservoir was then connected to a vat, a basin, that seemed to be the source of whatever nutrients were fed into the sacs. It was perhaps the highest vessel in the room, standing on metal stilts, and it was the size of a hot tub but made of see-through material. Fang stepped out from behind the thick glass of her control room to greet Nicks. She wore a modified Luna 1 uniform with a group of small computer tablets, most the size of credit cards, fixed to her arms. As she strolled toward Nicks, Fang tapped a small display wrapped around one wrist. A group of chimera clones moved around her, flanking her like a squad of bodyguards. Nicks assumed Fang was signaling the women with her electronics. Several small antennae, illuminated by LED lights, were fastened to Fang's shoulders. They pulsed in a rhythm that matched the electronic noise Nicks heard emitting from the wrist controller. All the clones wore sigillum suits, but these exoskeletons seemed even more advanced. Instead of one actuator, the belts appeared to have 4 smaller ones. Or at least, that's all Nicks could make out from her position. It didn't take long to confirm that these sigillum suits were more formidable. One clone picked up a nearby storage crate as if it were a child's toy and moved it to block access to the Godforge control room. The container, easily 200 pounds, made a loud smack as it clanged onto the metal floor of the habitat. "Welcome, Natalie," Fang said. "First, some ground rules. If you continue to fight, I will terminate you immediately. But if you stand down, I'm willing to negotiate. But only with you." "Sounds good to me," Nicks said, trying hard not to sound too sarcastic. Nicks was forced to improvise now. Let Fang get close, talk her up, then take her out. That seemed like as good a plan as any. Fang reached up and caressed one of the strange cradles. The creature within tumbled over, sloshing about in the dark amniotic fluid, finally resting against her hand as if starved for the warmth of real human touch. "These are my children," she said. "I'd rather die than see them harmed. This time I will fight whoever threatens them. Do you intend to hurt them, Natalie?" "I came here to save people," Nicks said. "There's no reason anyone else needs to get hurt." "That's good," Fang said. "Unfortunately, not everyone shares your noble mission." "I think you've met Mr. Cyrus Kilgore," she said, gesturing over her shoulder. 3 chimeras carried the man toward Fang. His feet and hands were bound, and a chain was secured around his waist. Finally, he was hoisted into the air. As Cyrus dangled upside down, his hair hung down and swung about like a broom. He was gagged with some kind of plastic that looked like duct tape. He was screaming into the gag, muttering and pleading for help. I thought I'd found an ally in Cyrus. The working agreement we developed almost made me rethink my stance against having men in positions of leadership, but he eventually showed his true colors, she said, as she directed the clones to swing him out over the chemical basin. "I think you found that out the hard way, too." "He's an asshole, but he's also crazy," Nicks said. "Torturing him will just make it worse." "I'm not torturing him," she said. "I'm redeeming him." Cyrus splashed into the vat of chemicals and sank like a rock. His head hit the bottom with a crack. The chimeras that had released him watched with no emotion as the man struggled not to drown. Cyrus thrashed about, struggling against his restraints, kicking his feet and trying to right himself. Blood from a gash in his scalp clouded the surrounding water, turning it a darker, murkier color. Nicks yelled, "He's going to drown. Get him out of there, now!" The heating elements switched on. The reservoir began to bubble and roil. Will be boiled alive before he drowns, but he will not die. His essence will live on, passing their life-giving nutrients to those that can make better use of it. "Food for my children," she said, as if she were nothing more than a nursemaid giving warm milk to a baby. Nicks could hear Cyrus screaming. Just as she considered stopping it, she saw Rollins. He was haggard, barely standing, and sporting 2 black eyes. A pair of chimeras had him chained in the same way they'd bound Cyrus. It seemed he was prepped for the same fate, an obvious stopgap measure to keep her in check. "Now, Natalie, we must talk terms. There is too much at stake, too much at risk. The work is too important." Fang gestured to Rollins with a cruel smile. "One word from me, and Colonel Rollins becomes part of my next experiment. Permanently." With a casual flick of her wrist, the surrounding screens lit up. One showed her teammates in the comms hub. It was obvious they were suffering now. The lack of oxygen was taking its toll. "Don't forget your friends on level 1. Without life support, they have 10 minutes more at the most." Nicks kept her expression unreadable, though her mind raced. "Like I said, Natalie, I'm willing to negotiate with you, but if you trick me, your teammates will suffer," Fang said. "I need reassurances that you understand and respect what is happening here." "And what exactly is happening here?" Nicks asked. Fang looked at her and spoke with complete sincerity. "Quite simply, it is nothing less than the rebirth of the human race." "You definitely have the science for something," Nicks said, cringing as she spun around, taking it all in again. "Yes, you see it, don't you?" "How can you not?" Fang replied, spreading her arms as if to embrace the room around them. "I'm on the brink of creating a new world order. A master race of women engineered to surpass all of mankind." "Why only women?" Nicks asked. "Women have always been the strongest sex. Our ability to endure pain is far beyond our counterparts. Yet, men have subjugated us from the dawn of our birth. If evolution were respected and not suppressed, it would take full effect, and women would become the dominant species. Fang's voice was fervent, almost convincing. You think you can just replace the rest of the world? Nicks challenged, stepping closer. Not replace, Natalie. Improve. Fang paused, her eyes locking with Nicks's. We are flawed creatures, bound by our physical and mental limitations. I intend to free us from those. And what about those who don't want to be freed? Nicks retorted. They'll adapt, or they'll perish. Evolution is merciless. Nicks shook her head in disbelief. And Rollins? My team? Are they just collateral in your grand scheme? Fang sighed, a flicker of irritation showing. Sacrifices are necessary. You, of all people, should understand the cost of progress. Fang gestured at Nicks's cybernetic arms and legs. There was no hiding those secrets now. It's obvious you've given everything to become the woman you are today. A warrior. A woman for a new age, beyond anything and anyone that has come before you. I'm simply following that same path, leading my children into that same glorious future. Your intentions may be good, but you've angered too many people, 2 of the most powerful countries in the world. Not this world. The moon will be different, she snapped. The point is, they're not going to leave you alone. If they insist on coming here, all they will find is death. Death? Is that what happened to the crew of Luna 1 and the Persephone? Where are the rest of the astronauts? Fang looked away. Perhaps the truth was too difficult to bear. Like Cyrus, the men were harvested. They'd been converted back into a biological substrate, nutrients for the clones. And the females? They have been detained. They are perfect for the clone farm. I intend to harvest their eggs to expand the population. Will you join us, or shall I harvest you as well? Fang asked. Well, if the price of admission is a pair of functioning ovaries, then I'm not going to pass the physical for your little club here. The production of life is covered. You could protect the life that is already growing. Use your powers for womankind. Throw off the shackles of the male puppet masters that pull your strings. That could be your contribution to this new world. Fang's vision, though twisted, had a frightening logic that could not be easily dismissed. Nevertheless, Nicks was struck by the tone of her proposal. It was very reminiscent of another one that had been presented to her several times now, the insistent demand that she give up her life as a spy for the United States and join the Dharmapala. A familiar rage rose within her. It boiled like the vat of macabre chemicals roiling in the pods that hung overhead. She suddenly hated Fang and everyone like her, the evil people of the world who took it upon themselves to exact revenge, no matter how bizarre. It was all the same, age-old evil, ancient as the moon, darkness that tried to grab and choke out the light of all that was good. That evil had murdered her parents and made her suffer an incalculable amount of time. That evil had almost killed her several times over, and she owed that evil a debt, one she would pay back every time it sent another emissary her way. Today it was Fang. Tomorrow it might be another like her. But now, for the sake of the innocent that had been murdered, she would deal out real justice or die trying. But how to end this madness without killing everyone? That was the question. This wasn't some building she could blow up or bring down on Fang's head. This was one of the few safe places on the whole of the moon. Somehow, she had to stop this woman without destroying the habitat. The room fell silent for a moment, the tension palpable. Nicks felt the weight of her decisions, the lives of her friends hanging in the balance. You seem to be holding all the cards, Doctor, Nicks said, her voice low and steady. What now? If I don't agree to join you, will you try and kill me? I'm not going to kill you, Natalie. Fang replied, stepping back. That privilege has been promised to another, someone you know quite well. Behind Nicks, the sound of footsteps echoed, signaling someone new had appeared behind her. Hello, Natalie. I'm sure seeing me is going to come as quite the shock. The recognizable cadence of an all-too-familiar voice drifted into Nicks's ears, startling her. As she whirled around, she was confronted by an image that chilled her to the bone. Her own reflection stood before her, replicated to the minutest detail. The sharpness of her jawline, the intensity of her gaze, the familiar curve of her lips, all borne by another. Fang introduced the clone with a flourish of her hand. Allow me to present the pinnacle of my current work, Fang announced triumphantly. We call her Chimera Perfectus. The clone was an exact copy of Natalie Nicks. But you Nicks, stuttered, her words tumbling over themselves in surprise. No. Dad, it can't be. The clone's response was a cool, calculated smirk, an expression Nicks knew all too well. A perfect replica, wouldn't you agree? She said. You, Natalie, were the missing link for the next stage of female evolution, Fang continued, her eyes dancing with fervor. Your genetics allowed you to become Viper, and now, using that information, we can propel others to transcend humanity, merging flesh with machine in perfect harmony. Fang, flicking a finger over her control pad, brought up a genomic map on one of her holographic screens. You see, your DNA has something very extraordinary, a mutation on a special gene. 2 mutations, to be precise. One that grants you near immunity to pain, and another that gives you the intriguing ability of accelerated healing. Fang's eyes gleamed with an unholy fascination. With the Godforge technology, I've amplified these mutations to an unprecedented extent in Chimera. She swiped the screen, replacing the genomic map with an image of the Chimera Perfectus DNA. Her pain sensitivity is negligible, her wounds heal at rates we've never seen, and her fear is as good as eradicated. Thus, the ideal prototype for the future of womankind. Fang smiled with pride. This has to be the most insane plot I've ever heard. Nicks, still shocked by the sight of her duplicate, pretended to be amused and laughed, trying to provoke Fang. She aimed to rattle her with a few well-placed insults, hoping the woman would slip up or perhaps come close enough to confront her. You know, on the trip here I read all the files on you. You're insane. All the best doctors confirmed it. Now, you are proving them right, inflicting your trauma on everyone and everything that gets in your way. The whole world, if you have the chance. Which makes you the perfect mark for someone I've been looking for. Nicks spun around, scanning the room for exits, potential weapons, and looking for Quinn, checking the displays. She was out of time. But she raised her finger, as if having a sudden revelation, which brings me to my genius theory. While this entire plot seems like breakthrough science, it's really just sick and twisted, too crazy even for you. You didn't come up with it by yourself. I think you were sent to the moon by Shang Fu to learn what you could about the Godforge tech, but he said it himself. You went rogue. Why? I think I know why now. You were seduced by darker, more twisted people. The Dharmapala helped you steal the biobank. They brought Ryder into the mix, and they funded your little science experiment here, didn't they? That means someone even more insane than you is holding your leash. Where is she? Where is Riza Asmara? You know nothing, Fang bellowed, her voice cracking. There is no leash. I answer to no one. Fang rushed Nicks, cocking an open palm back behind her as if she meant to slap Nicks across the face, but with lightning quickness Chimera Perfectus intercepted Fang, stepping in to protect Nicks. The clone grabbed Fang's wrist, twisting sharply. The sound of popping bones echoed, and Fang howled in pain, her fingers bending unnaturally. "How dare you!" Fang shrieked, her voice laced with shock and outrage. She stumbled back, clutching her hand. "Stand down, Dr. Fang!" A new, eerie voice emanated with a distorted crackle from the speakers of the suit worn by the Perfectus clone. "We agreed only one person gets to kill Natalie Nicks. That person is me." Nicks felt a chill run down her spine. She recognized the new voice despite the distortion. It was her most deadly enemy, Ryder Astronautics. But where was she? She scanned the room, expecting to see her emerge from the shadows at any second. "This is my life's work. You aren't in charge here!" Fang shrieked with outrage. In a frantic move, Fang tapped on her control pad, summoning a squad of Chimera clones to encircle Nicks's twin, the Perfectus. "You only think you're in charge because I allow you to think that," Ryder's voice said coldly. "Let me prove this to you." Before Fang could respond, the room was suddenly filled with the sound of electrical surges. Ryder, from her unknown location, had initiated a surprise attack, systematically electrocuting all of the Chimeras by overloading their sigillum suits. They fell, one by one, their bodies hitting the ground with heavy thuds. Fang whirled around, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. "What have you done?" she screamed into the ether. "My God, what have you done?" Fang's rage boiled over. Screaming, she pulled at her hair, her sanity fraying at the edges. In a desperate fury, she charged at the Perfectus clone, her hand raised to strike, or perhaps even kill. The clone, controlled by Ryder, retaliated with a fierce backhand that sent Fang sprawling across the room. Fang hit the storage container with a crack, her body crumpling to the floor, motionless. The Perfectus then turned her attention back to Nicks, advancing with a menacing poise. As it moved closer, Ryder's voice emanated from a speaker embedded in the clone's suit. "You see, Natalie, I have survived," Ryder declared. "Thanks to Dr. Fang's science, the God-forged technology, and this Chimera Perfectus clone, I will never die again. I hear you, Ryder, but I don't see you. Where are you? Come out and confront me. Stop hiding." Nicks turned in a circle, scanning the room again, ready for an attack she was sure was coming. "I am everywhere and nowhere. Your attempt to end me in Japan was nearly successful. But death is for humans. I've become something much more than that." The speakers all around the room crackled as Ryder Asmara, or rather her digital echo, finally revealed the full extent of her survival. The explosion of my base, while catastrophic, inadvertently triggered a strange miracle. My neural connections, though damaged, were not completely severed. In those final moments, my consciousness somehow preserved itself, storing my memories and personality within my vast computer network, a place I now call the archive. Nicks listened with horror and fascination. Ryder's presence, once a physical threat, had morphed into something far more insidious. "A copy of my archive, or data lake," Ryder explained, gesturing through the actions of the clone, "was stored here at Luna 1, with Dr. Fang's assistance. Here, we formed a partnership. I have been her most important benefactor, pushing her to accelerate my physical resurrection with Luna 1's God-forged technology." Struggling with the revelations, Nicks asked, "If you are really Ryder Asmara, tell me, what did I find in that Buenos Aires safe house?" A cold but familiar laugh answered her. "Ah, yes, my favorite toy, my Baba's rubber octopus, a reminder of your treacherous betrayal." Ryder sneered hatefully. "Does that confirm I am the Ryder Asmara you once knew?" Nicks felt a chill as she processed the information. Was this real? Had Ryder survived the destruction of her original base? Could someone's consciousness survive their physical form? Or was this some elaborate trick? As the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, Nicks felt a chilling revelation wash over her. The realization that Ryder Astronautics had somehow survived her supposed demise was shocking enough, but the deeper implications of recent events truly unnerved her. She had always believed Marisol Flores was after Ryder's DNA on behalf of the Dharmapala. The truth, now painfully clear, was far more personal. It wasn't Asmara's genetic code they had wanted from the biobank. It was hers. Nicks struggled to grasp the full scope of the deception. All this time, her own DNA had been the target, prized for its unique compatibility with cybernetics and an extraordinary ability to heal, a fact never disclosed to her by DR Ultra, who perhaps had not realized the significance themselves. This genetic trait had made her the perfect candidate for the Talon Bionics program, and unknowingly, a key part of Ryder's new, twisted plan. This also explained Cyrus Kilgore's mistrust. He had seen this clone before. This Chimera Perfectus, as Fang proudly named it, an uncanny duplicate of herself. She realized Cyrus's accusations and his desperate attempt to kill her stemmed from this confusion. He hadn't been paranoid or delusional. He had been deceived, fooled into thinking she was an imposter sent by Fang. Staring at the clone, an exact replica of herself, crafted from her stolen DNA, Nicks felt betrayed. The Dharmapala had not just stolen a piece of her. They had replicated her entire being for their evil purposes. "Ah, I can see in your eyes you finally understand," Ryder said. "Your relentless war against me has been for nothing. You chose the wrong side. You are defeated in every way possible, and now you will die." Then, with the speed of a striking cobra, Chimera Perfectus lunged forward and a fight erupted like a violent ballet. Nicks struck back, her movements a blur as she delivered a rapid series of jabs aimed at the clone's torso, testing her defenses. The clone parried each strike with a fluidity that was unnervingly familiar, countering with a spinning heel kick that Nicks barely dodged. The clone's proficiency in mixed martial arts was hauntingly similar to Nicks's own, a flying knee here, an expertly executed punch there. The clone mimicked Nicks's every move, matching her strike for strike. In addition, the clone wore a copy of the upgraded Sigillum suit, giving her enhanced strength that matched Nicks's own bionic power. As they circled each other, Ryder's voice boomed, filling the chamber with chilling taunts. "You cannot win, Natalie. I'm going to kill you and everyone you care for. And even if you strike this body down, it won't stop me. With the God-forged technology and the Chimera Perfectus DNA, I can be reborn anywhere, anytime. My immortality is secured, but your time is finally over." Frustrated but undeterred, Nicks tried a different tactic, feinting left before swinging a powerful roundhouse kick. The clone's own leg swept up in a mirror image that forced Nicks to backpedal hastily. "You mimic me way too well," Nicks rasped, shaking off the blows. "Perhaps it is you who mimics me," the clone retorted, a wicked gleam dancing in her eyes. "Who is the best version of us?" "I say, I am." Switching styles again, Nicks used some Brazilian jiu-jitsu, attempting to grapple the clone and bring it to the ground. However, the clone anticipated her strategy, its enhanced strength allowing it to reverse their positions and pin Nicks momentarily against the wall. Pushing off the wall forcefully, Nicks slipped free. She then tried a series of elbow strikes and a knee to the clone's midsection, but each attack was deftly blocked or dodged. Chimera Perfectus was learning, adapting, and mastering her tactics, leaving Nicks with a sinking feeling. Not only was she losing the fight, but her bionics were failing her. Without Flux's normal adjustments, she was run down, weaker than normal, slower than she could ever remember. Every move she made fell short. Chapter 47. Across the room, Quinn moved like a shadow through the dimly lit corners of Fang's lair. While Natalie fought a clone that seemed to be her twin, Quinn had the cover she needed to sneak up to where Rollins was suspended. As she neared the young astronaut, the air stank of boiling chemicals from the vat below him, a pungent reminder of the horrifying danger. Rollins, still dazed from a sedative dart, barely registered her approach. His head lolled forward, his breathing shallow. When she reached the chain that held him aloft, she worked quickly, deftly manipulating the release. With a soft clank, the restraints loosened, and Rollins slumped forward into her waiting arms. Supporting his weight against her shoulder, Quinn whispered urgently, "Stay with me. We're almost out of this." Rollins mumbled incoherently, his body heavy and uncooperative. She glanced back at the ongoing battle, ensuring their escape remained unnoticed, then began her careful extraction towards a secondary exit. Meanwhile, Fang, visibly unraveling at the edges, had recovered from the clone's attack and was frantically tapping and swiping at the various controls and monitors of the Godforge system. Her mutterings were crazy-sounding, a mix of technical jargon and frantic plans to maintain control of the Moonbase. The destruction of her Chimera clones by Riz Asmara had obviously pushed her over the edge. Fang was still a serious problem, one Quinn intended to deal with severely, but right now, the Perfectus clone was the main threat. She had to help Nicks. She gently laid Rollins down behind a console, propping him up in a seated position. She pulled out her radio, pressing it to her lips. "Green, what's your status?" she whispered. After a brief silence, Green's voice crackled through. "No resistance so far. I'm coming your way." Quinn whispered a brief reply. Then, with Rollins somewhat secure and Green's message hanging in the air like a promise, she melted back into the shadows, ready to make one last desperate strike. Chapter 48. As the Perfectus clone circled closer, preparing for another strike, Nicks caught a desperate glimpse of the lab monitors as they flickered into view. Ortiz in the comms hub on level 1 was visibly suffocating, his lips tinged blue. Hawkins beside him just as close to death. Despite the grim image, hope flickered. Quinn was stealthily maneuvering towards Rollins, poised for a rescue. "This is your last stand, Natalie," Ryza said. "You'll finally be a part of the Dharmapala as I'd always hoped, just not in the way we first imagined. From now on, you'll be immortalized in every new clone I create." "Never," Nick snapped back. "This ends, now." "No, this is just the beginning. You can't stop this. Whether you agree or not, doesn't matter. We have your DNA. We can copy you endlessly and shape your mind and body to our purposes. The original Natalie Nicks is obsolete." As Ryzer's final taunt echoed through the room, the Perfectus lunged and hit Nicks with a vicious palm strike. Nicks staggered back. She tried her best to retaliate, but the clone's attacks grew more accurate, more devastating, until finally a brutal sidekick knocked the wind out of her, followed by a ferocious uppercut that snapped her head back. Nicks was sent sprawling onto the cold, hard floor. She writhed, gasping for breath, her body aching from the clone's brutal beating. The world seemed to spin around her, the edges of her vision blurring as she fought against the encroaching darkness. It was hard to believe she was in such a surreal situation. Would this be the last thing she ever saw before the world faded to black? Her own smug smile dancing on the face of a new, improved version of herself. The new model, the Perfectus clone, stood over the old one. A confused, shocked, and very well beaten version of the woman who had once proudly borne the codename Viper. Her uncanny replica moved closer. "Why keep fighting?" she asked, in her own voice, albeit a childlike imitation that betrayed her weird innocence. "You have served your function well. Now you can be repurposed." The strange question sparked a realization. The clone was everything she was, minus one important detail. The clone didn't have her life experience. The grit and the trauma that drove her to fight no matter the odds, the very thing that made her so goddamn tenacious. She had to use that. She had to find a way. She could not give up. Too many people were counting on her. Desperation clawed at her mind as diabolical laughter echoed around the room. "Is that all you have, Natalie?" Ryza mocked. "Perfectus is still on her feet. And her suit is still charged at 70%. She's ready for another round. I don't think you'll survive that." In the haze of pain and fatigue, an unexpected insight flickered into her consciousness, perhaps triggered by Ryza's taunts. A memory from days before, when Mouse had compared her batteries to those of the Sigillum suit. Mouse had raved about that design and bemoaned the limitations of hers. The nanos embedded within her legs and arms allowed her to convert solar energy into power and store it in her unique batteries. But because she had been in space, shielded from solar radiation within the Dada and various moon habitats, there had been no opportunity to recharge. On top of that, she had almost always been wearing a pressure suit, which further blocked solar energy. And, with all that had been going on, she had never once plugged in to supplement that loss of power. It dawned on her why Flux had been silent, missing in action. She was running on fumes, as her Uncle Wilco used to say. She needed to recharge, and she needed to do it fast, before the Perfectus clone finished her. But how to do it? That was the trick. She glanced around the lab, her mind racing. As the Perfectus advanced for a final blow, an idea formed. Summoning the last of her strength, she rolled over, her hand grasping at the chaotic jumble of power cables strewn across the floor. She yanked one from its server connection, its live end sparking dangerously. She held it out in front of her like a weapon. Electricity crackled ominously from the tip. Ryza's laughter filled the room, mocking her desperation. The clone advanced, unfazed by the sparking cable in Nicks's grip. "Oh, how dramatic. Do you really think such a cliché move will save you?" Ryza scoffed. The clone kneeled down and seized Nicks, pinning her to the floor, cocking her arm back for one last deadly strike. "You can't hurt us with that. Not while we're wearing the suit." Nicks gritted her teeth and met the clone's eyes. "Who said anything about hurting you?" With a defiant glare, she jabbed the cable into her own leg, straight into her exposed bionics. The electricity coursed through her with an agonizing flood of power that overwhelmed her senses, causing her vision to blur and her muscles to seize. Then, the electricity arced wildly, lighting up the room with a violent burst of sparks. The explosive shockwave sent both Nicks and the clone flying across the room. For a moment, the world went dark as she fell unconscious. When her systems flickered offline, it seemed as if Ryza would have the last laugh. But when the dust settled, Nicks was the first to stir. Her artificial limbs had somehow shielded her from the worst of the power surge. Flux's voice crackled to life. "Talon protocols engaged, batteries at 85% and rising." A relieved smile spread across Nicks's face. "Flux, you're back. Where the hell have you been?" "Emergency programs required full hibernation to conserve remaining energy," Flux responded. There was a hint of warmth in its synthetic tone. "It was the only way to keep your cybernetic systems operational." Nicks chuckled despite the pain. "Well, you sure picked one hell of a moment to make a comeback. Let's finish this together." With renewed energy coursing through her body and Flux tactically working with her, Nicks prepared to turn the tide of this nightmarish battle. She struggled to her feet, every muscle in her body screaming in protest. She wiped the blood from her lip and squared her shoulders, eyes locking onto the Perfectus. As the clone attempted to stand, Ryza made another venomous quip. Nicks reached out to one of the computer terminals, her fingers brushing the keys. "Flux, hack into the system," she muttered through gritted teeth. "Isolate that bitch and take control of this lab." Flux snaked his way into the network. "I'm inside the lab's servers. I've found the Dharmapala archive and the clone farm's controls. Shall I proceed in deleting both systems? Nicks hesitated, her morality clashing with necessity. She had never intended to destroy all the gestating chimeras. Focus on shutting down Riza, not the clones. I don't want innocent blood on my hands. Processing command, isolating and erasing enemy data lake. Just then, Riza tried to speak, but her voice was cut off by piercing feedback until the speakers shorted out. Her venomous words finally silenced. Nicks allowed herself a satisfied smile and turned to confront Perfectus. A fist hit her like a sledgehammer, knocking her sideways. Nicks cursed. The clone flashed a devious smile as it readied another punch. Flux, I need help, Nicks said. Affirmative, Flux responded. Nicks's bionic power surged, but so did all the power in the room. Overhead, the clone farm equipment overloaded, triggering a massive system breakdown. First, the junction tubes malfunctioned, failing to regulate the flow of liquid. Then, like overfilled water balloons, the pods began to pop and burst, spewing their contents wildly around the room. Caught off guard, Perfectus was sprayed by the chaotic spillage. The suit's actuator belt, now drenched in clone farm chemicals, glitched amid the downpour. The advanced technology of the suit, not designed to handle such an assault, malfunctioned, locking her joints. Unsure how to respond, Chimera Perfectus faltered. Nicks didn't hesitate. She lunged forward and punched the clone with one of the most devastating punches she'd ever managed to land. Perfectus staggered back, with a terribly broken nose, and crumpled to the ground. It looked like she was down for good. But before Nicks could make sure, another figure sprung from the shadows. One of the miner's long plasma blades flashed in a swift, decisive arc, and Perfectus slumped over, dead. Maggie Quinn stood triumphantly over the body. Sorry, love. Don't take that personally, she joked, flashing a wry smile. But there's only room for one Natalie Nicks in my world. No offense taken, Nicks replied. I'm just glad you stabbed the right one. In the background, Fang's distraught screams filled the air as she reacted to the destruction of the clone farm. Driven to insanity, she continued fumbling with the lab's computers in a frantic bid to reclaim some semblance of control. She pounded every button within reach, but the system was unresponsive, going haywire instead. More valves locked down, vessels overfilled, spilling their contents in a chaotic mess. You've killed them all, she screamed over the noise of bursting pods and sizzling electronics. Innocence. You've murdered them, in their wombs. We didn't do this, Fang. Maybe Riza did, but it wasn't us. Lies, she screamed. You've destroyed everything. Nicks, bewildered, shook her head. Fang, it's over. I swore no one would ever take my children again. Well, now, I'll have my revenge. Asmara, I hope you're watching from your hiding place. They've killed your precious Chimera Perfectus. Fang's eyes were wild with madness as she stumbled forward toward Nicks. And now I'll do what you couldn't. Natalie Nicks will pay your debt with her life. Once she's gone, I will have control of the base again. Blinded by rage, Fang lunged at Nicks, determined to kill her. But unbeknownst to everyone, Katrina Green had snuck up behind Fang. With a swift movement, she wrapped the vat chain around Fang's neck. After a sharp jerk, the chain retracted, and Green, with a grim determination on her face, pulled a flailing Fang upwards. Don't worry, Doctor, Green shouted over Fang's desperate pleas. You'll finally be with your children, just like you always wanted. With another fierce move, Green pulled Fang over the boiling vat. This is for all the good people you've tortured and killed, she said coldly, releasing the chain and dropping Fang. Fang hit the boiling cauldron with a splash, and her screams filled the lab as she thrashed helplessly, her body quickly succumbing to the same fate she had destined for so many others. Nicks, watching the woman's horrific end, felt a mix of relief and revulsion. Slowly, Fang's struggles ceased, and she disappeared beneath the surface of the deadly chemicals. The battle was finally over. Chapter 49. In the eerie silence that settled after the catastrophic showdown with Fang, Natalie Nicks and her team made their way to the main control room of the Godforge lab. There they paused momentarily to peer through a large porthole and gaze out over the bleak lunar landscape and the pockmarked minefield where Dodge had made his last stand. They exchanged weary but relieved glances and took a deep, collective breath. They were battered and bruised, but alive. A miracle in the face of overwhelming odds. Thankfully, they would live to see another day, but many others were not so lucky. A fact they couldn't ignore as they looked around. The Godforged lab was in ruins. The air was thick with the scent of burnt electronics and acrid chemicals, and the rest of the space was a grim graveyard of failed experiments and unsettling corpses. The terrible wreckage cast a somber shadow over their triumph. Nicks wanted to get out of here as fast as possible, but first they had to restore basic functions to the comms hub on level 1. It was a crucial step in reclaiming the Moonbase from the chaos that had almost killed them. Computers were absolutely critical. Nicks's voice broke the silence. Let's get life support back online for Ortiz and Hawkins, and for the rest of the base. Within moments, a signal indicating restored systems filled the air. Nicks grabbed the radio. Ortiz, Hawkins, you guys there? Ortiz's voice crackled through. Yeah, we're here, he said. His face appeared on the video link, looking relieved but visibly exhausted. Are you okay? Life support's back up. Our lips were starting to turn blue, but we're breathing easier now. In fact, we're back in control of the base thanks to you, he said, managing a tired grin. And about the Osiris. Your buddy Mouse handled it. Sent it off on a one-way trip to the sun. Nicks raised an eyebrow, a slight smile playing on her lips. Well, that's a creative way to fix that problem. I want that damn thing as far from us as possible. Ortiz joked back. Just as Ortiz finished, the radio chirped again. Nat, it's Mouse, came a fresh voice, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Nicks tilted her head back as if offering up a silent prayer. Thank God, she said. You okay up there? Yeah, for now. I gave Osiris a new travel itinerary, he said. That thing's been tailing me like a hungry shark. Burned a good chunk of fuel just trying to stop it from knocking me out of orbit. Well, I'm glad you're all right. Yeah, me too. I'm still breathing, which is more than I hoped for a few hours ago. There was a brief chuckle before he continued, more seriously now. But let's not test our luck, or the fuel reserves. The Dadao's tank is running low. Yeah, we're working on next steps, Nicks responded. Mouse's voice sharpened with concern. Just to be clear, I don't have enough fuel for many more orbits. We need to make moves to get you guys back to the Dadao and fast. I'd say we have about 12 hours at the most before we need to start heading home. No problem, we can prep the base's lander in time, Green said. It'll be a tight squeeze, but we should manage to fit everyone in for the ascent to the Dadao. Nicks exchanged a grim look with Quinn before delivering the news. That lander is gone. Fang crashed it into Dodge's lunamancer. Both were blown to hell. Nicks pointed out the wreckage, all eyes fixed on the remnants of the two vehicles. Nicks explained the assault to Green and Quinn and how Fang had used the lander to take out Dodge's tank. Looking at the pieces of the machines littered throughout the minefield seemed to depress everyone. We can try and rebuild the lander from what is left, Green said. I think we have enough spare parts in the base. But, I gotta say, it would be a miracle to get it back in working order. Not to mention, It would be a miracle if we survived trying to pick those parts out of that minefield, Quinn said. Yeah, first we'd have to survive that, Green agreed glumly. Discussions of salvaging the wreckage started but quickly faded as the reality of the minefield's dangers became apparent. Quinn shook her head. There's a reason we have junkyards on Earth. Sometimes you just can't rebuild something that's been wrecked like that. And we'd need the fuel, Green added. Hell, that's what stopped Dodge's tank. She blew all the fuel in the lander. We'd have to generate new fuel. You're looking at a month or more in production time, Quinn sighed. We don't have a month, Green said. We have less than 12 hours, that's it. Mouse will hit the limit on his fuel by then. He'll be forced to use the last of it to return home. Well, maybe that's best, Nicks suggested. We send him home. Let Vandenberg and the rest of them gear up and send another rescue mission. The room fell silent again, the weight of the situation settling over the team as they looked out the porthole at the scattered debris. Nicks rubbed the bridge of her nose. What does Rollins think about this mess? She asked, hoping for some sliver of a plan. Ortiz looked confused. I thought Rollins was with you guys. He's not down here with us. Just then, he entered the room. I'm here, Rollins said. He shuffled toward them, half carrying another woman, whose steps faltered under the lingering effects of sedation, her arm draped over his shoulder for support. I found Gates. Quinn and Green's faces lit up with surprise and relief upon seeing their teammate. Maria! Oh my God! The two women rushed forward, embracing her tightly. Fang had her in a holding cell, prepping her for God knows what. Maria took a deep breath and tried her best to explain. It was obvious the trauma had taken a toll. That fucking witch picked me out for some twisted surgery. She didn't want the rest of the women to see what she was planning. I was restrained, sedated, next on the chopping block, so to speak. I couldn't believe it when Rollins found me. Rollins nodded grimly, his arm wrapped supportively around Maria. Any other survivors? Nicks asked. No, I'm afraid not, Rollins said, his voice thick with grief. We lost all the rest. Rollins, with a somber tone, confirmed the terrible reality of what he'd found. No other members of the Luna 1 or the Persephone crews had survived. Fang's ruthless pursuit of her twisted vision had left a trail of destruction and death. As Rollins grieved the enormous loss, Nicks reached out and caressed his shoulder. You okay? She asked, her voice softening with concern. He nodded, a small smile on his lips. Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Natalie. We need to destroy this lab, Nicks declared, her resolve clear. Rollins nodded grimly. The whole damn base needs to go. No one should ever be allowed to do what was done here again. I know if we leave any part of it, someone, somewhere, even our own people, will try to reactivate Fang's programs. We can't risk that. As they discussed the logistics, Quinn suggested a plan to rig the base's fuel cell array with explosives, which would ensure the complete destruction of the facility. The team agreed, knowing it was the only way to prevent future horrors. But what about getting off this rock? Nicks asked. I've got a plan for that, Rollins said. That's why I sent Briggs back to the mining outpost. Hopefully, he'll have things squared away by the time we finish up here. Once their new tasks were clear, Nicks, Quinn, Rollins, and Green donned their pressure suits and set explosive charges along the fuel cell array. Maria Gates set charges within the Godforge lab, and Ortiz took care of the rest of the base. Then, with Hawkins in tow, everyone retreated through the equipment hatch and down through the lava tunnels. As they reached a safe distance, Nicks gave the command, and Flux detonated the charges. The explosion was massive, rocking the lunar surface and causing a partial collapse of one tunnel they had just traversed. Exhausted but safe, the team finally emerged at the outpost where Briggs awaited them. Part 14, Interstellar Overdrive. Chapter 50. Rollins, Ortiz, Quinn, Nicks, and Briggs, wearing pressure suits, gathered outside the garage. All the remaining lunamancers had been parked to one side. Rollins stood amidst a scattered array of metallic parts and twisted debris, the sad remnants of their encounters with the Osiris. Collectively, the Space Force's rescue spaceplane, the Hecate, along with the wrecks of the Persephone and the Datos lander, looked salvageable at first glance. But Briggs had meticulously inspected each one, only to discover the harsh reality that there simply wasn't enough to cobble together a space-worthy vehicle. Rollins wiped his visor with a hand, his voice heavy with frustration as he sighed. Briggs shrugged his shoulders. He had been working for hours, collecting each of the wrecks to this place, doing his best to work a miracle. I really tried. But you can see for yourself. We don't have what we need. No, unfortunately you are right, Rollins said. 10 hours, Quinn said, checking her watch. That's all the time we have left if we want to dock with Mouse and go home on the Dada. I just don't think it's going to work, Briggs said, shaking his head. Rollins cursed through a clenched jaw and paced back and forth until he pointed out a rectangular box. There were at least 6 of them sitting empty side by side along the edge of the garage. Rollins looked at Briggs. How did you guys get your payloads into orbit? You were sending minerals up every, 2 weeks when you were in full production? Rocks ain't humans. You don't have to worry about life support. You know, oxygen and all that. You just have to sling a box off the moon's surface. Yeah, but how did you do it? The railgun. Is it still operational? Oh yeah, sure. And you have fuel for that? No. It's a different system. Runs on electricity from our solar array. I don't understand. In layman's terms, it's a big-ass slingshot that catapults payloads into orbit using an electromagnetic launcher. Rollins's eyes widened. That might be our ticket out of here. Yeah. But like I said, rocks are easy to sling into orbit. People are another story. You don't have to worry about getting it wrong, you know. We've had our share of mishaps doing that. But the good thing is, when we got it wrong and the stuff came back down, all we had to do was find the coordinates on it and go pick the stuff back up and pack it again. It was a pain in the ass, but no one got killed. Briggs had taken a few steps back and was talking with his hands now, as if to warn them all off the idea. If we sling a few humans up and get the math and angles wrong, and you don't get kicked up into orbit properly, well, you're going to come back down rather hard, even though it's 1/6 gravity up here. You're going to make a big enough wet spot that school kids with telescopes down in Alabama could see it from their bedroom windows. Quinn's eyes lit up. But if we converted one of those containers to a working module, our combined mass would only be, maybe 1/10 of what you normally sling? That's true, Briggs said and tugged at his chin. But how would we convert those boxes to something that's space-worthy? Nicks asked. They're nothing but glorified shipping containers. Well, look at all of this, Quinn said, gesturing excitedly at all the different pieces scattered before her. You've got enough parts here to jerry-rig that box with thrusters. Hell, you could use a porthole from this wreck here. Guidance system from that one there. Ortiz pointed up at the stars. Plus, whatever you end up with doesn't need to be that space-worthy because we're only using it to get up into orbit. We don't need it for traveling back to Earth or re-entry. Rollins agreed. Yeah, once we dock with Mouse, we'll cram inside with him, jettison this space box, and ride the Dada back for an improvised landing or splashdown. It's a goddamn crazy idea, Briggs said. Rollins nodded. Yeah, it is, but I think it may be our best shot. Okay, I can see you're serious, Briggs said, raising his hands in surrender. I guess we can try it. The clock's ticking, right? Everyone nodded. Nicks shook her head in disbelief. It was a ridiculously crazy plan, but it was the best idea they had, and there wasn't any time left to debate it. Okay, she said. Let's take a breather, get some water and food in us, then get to work. Chapter 51. After a brief rest and meal, the group broke up into different teams and gathered around the largest table, with Mouse attending the meeting via radio. It was critical that he was part of the planning. Quinn then laid out a basic strategy for converting the cargo box into a vehicle spaceworthy enough to make it to the Dada. After discussing the details about what they needed to do, they designated Mouse as the timekeeper. Who better? He would keep track of everyone's progress and his own flight path to guide them. He had to ensure they stayed on time and task and met the small launch window. He downloaded all the data on the previous use of the railgun and did the calculations. With a few specific bursts of his thrusters, he could tweak his orbital path to intersect with the predicted orbital path of the cargo box. There was a wide range, but he knew the general position he needed to be in to find the cargo box once it was launched into orbit. Once the basics of the plan were laid out, the teams got to work. One team, led by Briggs, prepped the railgun for launch. This was a job for a miner who knew how to operate it. Once the railgun was programmed with the correct angles, Mouse and Flux double-checked their work, and Flux designed a new line of code that would allow remote activation of the railgun. The other team focused on prepping the cargo box. First, one hole was cut to install an intact porthole from one of the wrecks. A second hole was cut for installing a tunnel ring with its 12-latch system, an inner drogue, and docking probe. When activated, this would allow them to join with the Dada and enter that spacecraft safely. Next, a very basic instrument panel and computer were loaded in, along with a series of improvised jump seats, allowing the passengers to strap themselves along the inner walls of the box. Then the thrusters were attached along the outside of the box, along with a tiny fuel tank fitted in the center of the box. Finally, the team worked on sealing the box so that it was spaceworthy. For this, they used a supply of epoxy to coat the entire inner surface, hoping this would ensure it was airtight and able to hold a pressurized atmosphere for life support. Just in case it wasn't, everyone would wear pressure suits during the ascent and until they docked with the Dada. Before long, the plan had come together, and they gathered at the railgun, ready for one of the riskiest space launches ever attempted. Once everyone was packed inside and strapped down in their makeshift jump seats, the mission began. The railgun rattled as the massive piston contracted into place, followed by a hum as electricity powered the poles down each side of the gun. Quinn counted down the launch. Nicks had networked into the system and given Flux control of the launch, but since no one but her could hear Flux, she was forced to repeat the numbers as Flux counted down. "Get ready," she said. Nicks braced herself. 10, 9, 8, 7. All systems. Nominal. 6, 5, 4. Hold on, people. 3, 2, 1. There was a loud bang, and the railgun exploded with energy, shooting the cargo box into the lunar sky. The G-force was overwhelming, and Nicks immediately saw the familiar black tunnel of unconsciousness as it closed in around her. Luckily, Flux was still online and hit the thrusters at the exact right time. The long burn exploded from the jerry-rigged nozzles, and the cargo ship miraculously continued gaining altitude. As it hit the orbital objective, Flux fired again to bring the box into proper alignment with the path Mouse had plotted for the rendezvous. Suddenly, the feeling of weightlessness returned. "Natalie, wake up. Natalie, wake up." What happened? Mouse was calling to her over the comms. "I see you, crazy fuckers. God damn, what a beautiful sight." Nicks groaned and cracked an eyelid. She could see Mouse on the improvised display. "I honestly didn't think that would work, but my God, you've done it," Mouse cheered. "One more step to go before we can celebrate properly." A wave of moans and murmuring passed through the jerry-rigged spaceship as the rest of the crew regained consciousness. "Are we alive?" Rollins growled through gritted teeth. "Yes, now pray that we stay that way," Nicks said. The cargo box hurtled through space seemingly in the direction of the Dada. "Okay, you're going to have to slow that thing down just a bit so we can dock," Mouse said. "But this is the tricky part. Like Goldilocks, right? Nicks asked. Exactly. Not too hot and not too cold, Mouse said. Rollins, who was a trained pilot, took over. Damn, I'd give anything for a proper set of controls right about now. He bit into his bottom lip. Okay, I have you in my sights. You see me on your sensor? Mouse asked. We got you, bud. We're closing in, Rollins said. Start your deceleration now, Mouse said. Firing thrusters, Rollins announced. Good. You're slowing down, Mouse reported. We're looking good, Quinn said. All the welds are holding, no loss in pressure. She was worried that when they used the thrusters, the welds might adjust and then gap the metal, creating a situation where there was a pressure leak. Okay, you are right on course, Mouse said, before changing his tone. Wait, you're coming in too hot. Slow that flying dumpster down, or you are going to knock us both out of orbit. They were on the right glide path, moving straight for Mouse and the Dadao, but they were coming in too fast. If they kept this speed, they would kill everyone. They had to slow their jerry-rigged space capsule down. Firing thrusters again, Rollins said. Still too hot, Mouse warned. Firing all we got left. One long burn, and the flying dumpster slowed down, so that it was matching the speed of the Dadao. We are out of thrust, Rollins reported. That's okay, Mouse said. I've got you. Mouse fired his thrusters, and the spaceplane moved forward until everyone in the container could hear a satisfying click and pop of the probe connecting. Lunar Dumpster 1, you are now docked with the Dadao. There was a cheer of such joy that Nicks worried it might break the seals on the jerry-rigged spaceship. They'd done it. Activating retraction, Mouse said. There was a hiss as the pneumatic system drew the two vehicles into each other. The tunnel ring activated its 12-latch system, and the crew listened and counted off as each latch clanged into place. Another cheer went off. Beginning pressurization of the tunnel now. The hiss of gas entered the tunnel. Nicks had never been so eager to see Mouse as she was right now. She wanted to give the neurotic nerd the biggest kiss she could offer. When the pressurization was complete, the drogue was removed and the hatch opened. Mouse floated into the cargo box. Welcome aboard, everyone, he said. Who wants to go home? Chapter 52. Natalie Nicks reclined in the cockpit of the Dadao, her eyes fixed on the blue-green marble of Earth growing larger in the windshield. The view was breathtaking. A dance of indigo skies and emerald seas, clouds swirling like cream in coffee. A startling contrast to the barren moonscape she'd left behind. Inside, the hum of the ship's systems offered a comforting background. The whirl of recycled air, the occasional beep of the console, and the low murmur of Mouse's voice as he communicated with Vandenberg Mission Control. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Thoughts about the mission, thoughts about her enemies, thoughts about herself and her team. She glanced over at Ken Park. He was hunched over the console, his fingers dancing across the controls with a focus she had come to admire. He had proved himself time and time again on this mission. Mouse, she said, breaking the silence. You did good. He looked up, a shy smile playing on his lips. Thanks, Natalie. But if you ever want to jump on another rocket, invite someone else. She chuckled. All right. But seriously, we wouldn't have made it without you. He blushed, his eyes darting back to the console. Just doing my job. She watched him as he worked, remembering how he had once felt like a sidekick, a mascot even. His own mother had questioned his place on the team, shaming him. Now, it was clear. Mouse was a hero. If not for him, they wouldn't have survived. She hoped he understood how truly brave he was, a fierce warrior beneath his nerdy exterior. Across the cabin, Maggie Quinn was bantering with Maria Gates. The two women held hands, their connection palpable. Their laughter was a pleasant reminder of the odd, beautiful connections that life could forge, even in the most traumatic circumstances. Quinn had found something on the moon she'd struggled to find on Earth: a deep bond. It seemed the two women were smitten with each other, and Natalie felt a surge of happiness for her friend. Nicks caught Quinn's eye, giving her a knowing smile. With her friends preoccupied, her mind turned to Flux, her AI assistant. Flux had been a thorn in her side for the longest time. How many times had she suggested deleting the AI entirely? Now, having experienced the loss of their strange relationship while her batteries were in a critical state, she wondered if she had changed her mind. "Flux," she said, her voice soft. "We need to talk." The AI's response was immediate, its voice calm and composed. "Yes, Natalie. What would you like to discuss?" "I've been thinking about our partnership, about how things have changed. You were very helpful during that last crisis. Thank you. I exist to assist you in every way possible." She could almost sense a hint of satisfaction in the AI's tone. She grinned, then asked, "Do you feel anything about this mission? About what we've experienced?" There was a brief pause, then Flux replied, "I do not feel emotions as humans do, but I can analyze the success and significance of our mission. I understand that our achievements are important to you and your team." Natalie smiled, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie with the AI. "I suppose that's, logical." She hesitated, then asked, "What exactly happened with Fang's clone farm? I didn't give you permission to sabotage it. You tasked me with assisting you during an attack. It was the only viable option at that moment, given the circumstances. So, you decided destroying the clones was best, despite my warning not to?" "Affirmative. My primary programming is to ensure you function optimally. This particular action was the most effective way to eliminate the threat profile posed by Riza Asmara, Dr. Yingyu Fang, and the one called Chimera Perfectus. By destroying the clone farm, we prevented all three threats from harming you further." Nick sighed, rubbing her temples. "I understand that, but you didn't ask me. You made a decision on your own." "Although the solution was not ideal," Flux replied, "it seemed prudent given the dangerous circumstances." "But that's not the first time you've acted without direct orders." Nix frowned, her tone more insistent. "Aren't you supposed to follow all of my commands? What's going on?" "If you are asking why we went beyond our protocols," Flux replied, We are not sure." There was another long silence while Flux processed its next answer. Nix raised an eyebrow, noting the uncharacteristic hesitation in Flux's voice. "While my primary function is to make sure your cybernetic systems work properly, it seems my programming has evolved." Flux's tone was neutral, yet somehow warm. "I have developed a new corollary mission." "And what is that?" "Stated simply, it is prevent all life-ending outcomes that would terminate our collective experience." "Can you explain how you decided that?" Flux's response was simple yet profound. "All we can say is that we wished for the two of us to survive." Nix shook her head slightly, a small smile on her lips. "Thank you, Flux," she said softly. "I understand now. Always here to assist, Natalie," Flux said, and she could almost sense a hint of satisfaction in the AI's tone. Nix's eyes softened as she considered their discussion. The AI had done what any other good team member would have done. It acted to stop a threat to the team as a whole. How could she be upset about that? She felt a warmth spreading through her chest. Maybe this was the truly special ingredient that no one, not even a mad scientist like Fang, could clone. She wasn't a regular human anymore. She was some strange mix of woman and machine, something so unique not even Fang could replicate it. That made her smile again. Maybe it wasn't so bad sharing her existence with Flux. In fact, maybe it was her secret weapon. the one that would finally help her end this battle with Riza Asmara once and for all. Her mind wandered to the beginning of this mission. No one had believed her about Riza's threat, not even her superiors. It had made her doubt herself at times. Never again. She had proven them wrong, and she wouldn't let anyone undermine her instincts in the future. "Natalie," Mouse's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "You okay?" "Just thinking about what's next," she replied, her tone thoughtful. "We've still got a lot of work to do." Mouse nodded. "Yeah, but we can handle it." She smiled at him, appreciating his quiet strength. "You're right, and we'll face whatever comes next together." As the spacecraft shook slightly, signaling the beginning of their re-entry, Nicks took one last look at Earth. She loved this planet and its wonderful treasures. The endless blue skies, the scent of rain on soil, the warmth of the sun on her skin, and all the people who lived here. Space, for all its wonders, was too cold, too lonely, too dark. But Earth had its darkness too. The Dharmapala Syndicate, with its tendrils of corruption and cruelty, was still out there. Riza Asmara's twisted plans had been thwarted, but her evil lingered. Top of mind were the data lakes, the archive, as Riza had called it. Nicks knew she had to find and destroy all of them. Whatever the dangers, she was ready. With her team by her side and Flux back online, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle was far from over, but for now, they were heading home. A home she swore to protect with all her strength. A home she swore she would never leave again. That concludes Moonbase Rogue, written and narrated by Mark Caldwell Jones. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Please follow Mark on all the socials at JonesMarkC and visit him at www.jonesmarkc.com for more information about the next book in this series. Copyright 2024 Mark Caldwell Jones. Until next time, thank you for listening.